Chapter 1100. One of the big differences between shadowed star and other cultivation stars was the strength of its gravitational pull. In the past, Yang Kai had discovered that the larger a cultivation star was, the greater the gravitational pull. It seemed that the two were directly proportional, and shadowed star's gravitational pull was particularly strong. Other cultivation stars simply couldn't compare to it. Cultivating in this kind of environment would definitely give Yang Kai greater benefits than cultivating on other cultivation stars. On top of that, the world energy aura here wasn't as thin as he had imagined. Compared to Rainfall Star and Water Moon Star, it was indeed slightly inferior. However, Yang Kai was from Tongxian Realm, so compared to Tongxian Realm, this place was like heaven on earth. Yang Kai was very satisfied with this place. After wandering around star territory for several years, Yang Kai felt that he should find a place to temporarily settle down and cultivate. Only when his strength was strong enough would he have the strength to do what he wanted. In the vast expanse of star territory, finding Su Yang was tantamount to looking for a needle in a haystack. However, Yang Kai saw a feasible method from his previous path. That was to make his name known and let everyone in star territory know of his existence. This way, no matter where Su Yang was, she would definitely take the initiative to find him, eliminating the need for Yang Kai to run around and search for her. Back on Tongxian Realm, the Hu sisters Hu Jiao and Hu Mai had come to Nine Heavens Holy Land to ask him for help precisely because they heard his name. This process may be very long, but it was much more feasible than running around like a headless fly. Yang Kai was prepared to spend a dozen years or even 100 years to achieve this goal. Yang Kai didn't care about time because no matter how long it took, the feelings between him and Su Yang would never fade. The same was true for his little senior sister. When he was strong enough, he could return to Tongxian Realm and bring them back to star territory. Shadowed Star was one of the stops Yang Kai decided to make. After walking around the Haiku family manor for a while, Yang Kai grew bored and was considering whether he should go to Heavenly Fate City to take a look when the light of a star shuttle suddenly rose up from the manor and shot out. Yang Kai clearly saw Wu Yi's figure standing on top of this star shuttle. Thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai used his star shuttle to follow behind Wu Yi. Yang Kai didn't know what Wu Yi had encountered, but she seemed quite aggrieved. As they flew, Yang Kai could still hear her sobbing. Wu Yi flew aimlessly and soon landed on a barren mountain peak, sitting alone on top of which was her green-robed Wu Yi was hugging her knees and burying her head in her arms. Kai Yang landed beside her, but he didn't know how to comfort her, so he just stood there and waited for her to recover. Wu Yi Yang Kai's sects Wu Yi, S Yang Kai's, Wu Yi's star. Yang Kai was speechless. Yang, Wu Yang's Wu's, Wu, and Wu, she Wu Wu's and Wu Yang Wu's, Wu was, Wu Wu's Yang Wu's too aggrieved, Wu Yi Yang sobbed. Wu Yi said while choking with sobs, so many people died just to collect those ores, but the family gave them all to that bastard Xie Hong when with just a few words, not even a decent reward. Small families have their own sorrows. This isn't the first time something like this has happened, right? Why do those strong people like to bully the weak? Is there no fairness in this world? If I were standing in a high position, I would never do such a thing. Wu Yi shouted indignantly, seemingly venting the anger in her heart. Don't they know that doing this will only chill the hearts of the people? Once the hearts of the people are gone, the family will also be gone. How can they be so short-sighted? Do they have to bow and scrape to survive? When you really stand in that position, perhaps you'll understand this kind of helplessness. Whose side are you on? Wu Yi glared at Yang Kai bitterly, somewhat annoyed that he wasn't speaking up for her. Yang Kai quickly raised his hand. Good, you speak, I'll shut up and just listen. Wu Yi seemed to have been encouraged and her red lips began to move, pouring out all the grievances and injustices she had suffered over the years, regardless of whether Yang Kai was willing to listen or not. Her family's cowardice made her sad, Shadow Moon Hall's strength made her helpless, and her own weakness made her sad. She seemed to have endured a lot of pressure and torture. After rambling for a long time, Wu Yi's mood finally eased a lot, but her eyes were still swollen like peaches. Suddenly changing the topic, she turned to Yang Kai and asked, "Was that golden spear made by you?" Yang Kai decisively shook his head. This woman really did have some doubts. After all, she knew all about his subordinates. The only one she didn't know was Yang Kai, whom she had picked up halfway. It really wasn't you? Wu Yi seemed to be in disbelief. Why do I feel like you're not as weak as you look? Yang Kai had to admit, this woman's intuition was quite terrifying. Yang Kai smiled and said, I'm just a third-order saint. Even if I have some hidden means, how strong could I possibly be? Wu Yi stared at him blankly for a moment before slowly shaking her head. I don't know, I just feel like you're not someone to be trifled with. If I were to fight with you, the one who would lose would likely be me. It's just a feeling I have, one I trust very much in. You think too highly of me, Yang Kai flatly denied, changing the subject. Right, I want to say goodbye to you. Goodbye. Wu Yi was stunned. Where are you going? Is there anyone you know on Shadowed Star? No, but don't try to win me over, I won't join your family. Wu Yi smiled. Our small family is not something you can accept. Although your cultivation isn't high, you're still an outsider and have seen many great storms. Ian, how about this? Don't say goodbye to me, I won't try to win you over, but don't forget the agreement between us. Of course I haven't forgotten. Then don't go. Wu Yi got up and stretched exaggeratedly, letting out a mewling sound as her curvaceous figure was revealed. Not minding Yang Kai's strange look, she simply stomped her foot and said, How about I give you this barren mountain? Give it to me. Yang Kai was stunned. This Dragon Cave Mountain is a property under my name and has a radius of 1,000 kilometers. Although there aren't any precious treasures or rare ores here, the world energy here doesn't lose out to anywhere else. I often come here to cultivate and the scenery is quite good. Yu Feng and the others also come here often. In any case, you don't have anywhere to go, so you can stay here. As long as you're willing, from now on, this is your territory. Yang Kai frowned at her and found that she didn't seem to be joking, asking in surprise, such a big piece of land, you want to give it to me just like that? Wu Yi giggled. What do you know? On Shadowed Star, such a piece of land isn't worth anything. Shadowed Star is too big, even if my Haiku family is a small family, we still have a territory of several tens of thousands of kilometers. What does a trivial mountain count for? You haven't encountered such a situation on any other cultivation star, have you? Yang Kai nodded, only now realizing that such a piece of land wasn't worth anything on Shadowed Star at all. Why are you trying so hard to keep me here? Don't tell me you've taken a fancy to me. Yang Kai suddenly became vigilant. Wu Yi stared at him for a moment before suddenly bursting into laughter. Yang Kai's face went black. What are you laughing at? Wu Yi waved her hand and said, I know you have many women and all of them like you, but don't think so highly of yourself. I only want to revitalize my family and haven't considered the matters between men and women. Ian, even if I did, I wouldn't take a fancy to a guy with so many women. That's good. Yang Kai snorted somewhat unhappily. Is that a deal? Wu Yi looked at him with a smile. I'll stay here for the time being, I have nowhere to go anyways. Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders. In fact, this place is quite good. Just 50 kilometers from here is Heavenly Fate City, so if you want to buy anything, it'll be more convenient. Oh right, you don't seem to have anything now, so I'll have Yu Feng send you some things in a few days to help you set up your residence. You can live here with peace of mind, don't think too much about it, just treat this place as a place to settle down. When I take charge of the family one day, I'll summon you, don't even think about refusing. Yang Kai spat disdainfully. He felt that it would take at least a few dozen years for Wu Yi to take charge of the Haiku family. Following Wu Yi, the two of them shuttled through the mountains and soon arrived at a deep cave. There were some traces left behind by someone who had meditated here before. Wu Yi explained that they were her handiwork. The cave seemed to be quite deep and extended all the way into the belly of the mountain. Inside, there was a clear mountain spring that converged into a pool, its water so clear that one could see the bottom. The conditions are a bit difficult, but you'll have to make do. Ian, if you want, you can actually live in my family's manor. Yu Feng and the others are all there. No need, this place is quite good. Yang Kai shook his head. In any case, it was just a place to settle down, so it didn't matter where he lived. Although the manor was lively and not lonely, the world energy aura there couldn't be compared to here, so Yang Kai was quite satisfied. Then you should familiarize yourself with the place first. I have to go back. I haven't given them the reward I promised yet, Wu Yi said before leaving. After Wu Yi left, Yang Kai took a closer look at the place he had chosen to stay. Although there was a mountain spring in the cave, the environment was not humid, making it very suitable for living. Even though this cave was naturally formed and had many twists and turns, it didn't have a proper stone room. Spreading out his divine sense, Yang Kai found that the situation within a 1,000-kilometer radius around him was as clear as day. As Wu Yi said, there were no spirit grasses or spirit medicines here, nor were there any mineral lodes worth paying attention to. Besides the decent world energy aura here, it was just a barren mountain. No wonder she didn't feel the slightest bit of heartache when she said so. Yang Kai knew why Wu Yi wanted him to stay. It was simply because he had come from the outside and was more familiar with the outside world. This was what Wu Yi valued the most. As for his own strength, she probably didn't place him in her eyes. Wu Yi had a great ambition to revitalize her family, while Yang Kai also had a great ambition to reach Yang territory. The two of them had different goals, but they both required years of hard work to achieve them. Yang Kai suddenly felt that this place might be a good springboard. Through the Haiku family, through Shadow Moon Hall, and through Shadowed Star, his name would spread throughout Yang's territory. At that time, he wouldn't need to worry about Su Yang not being able to hear his name or not being able to find him. Thinking so, Yang Kai was filled with hope for the future. Chapter 1101. Yang Kai simply cleaned up the cave and found a relatively good location for his own bedroom. Immediately after, Yang Kai left the cave and wandered around the 1,000-kilometer Dragon Cave mountain, recalling the various spirit arrays used to gather world energy. Yang Kai had come into contact with this type of spirit array many times before, such as in Tongxian Realm's Soaring Heaven sect, Nine Heavens Holy Land, Gui Zu's residence on the floating continent, and Rainfall Star's Zhong Ao a few years ago. Since Yang Kai decided to stay here, it was only natural for him to find a comfortable cultivation environment. Yang Kai didn't have much knowledge about spirit arrays. What he knew most was spirit arrays used for alchemy, but the Tao of spirit arrays was one of a kind. After many years of exposure, Yang Kai also knew how to arrange a world energy gathering spirit array. This required the coordination of the geographical location, supplemented by some materials, and through various means, a decent formation could be formed. Although Dragon Cave Mountain wasn't very large, Yang Kai found that the natural conditions here were quite good. Near the cave Wu Yi had found for him, there were several mountain peaks surrounding the cave. If he used them as a foundation, he would be able to arrange a good spirit array. While wandering around the mountain, Yang Kai kept recalling some of the things Great Elder Shu Hui had told him when he was the Holy Master of Nine Heavens Holy Land, including the mysteries of the Holy Land's 9 peaks and spirit arrays. Soon, Yang Kai had some ideas. Instead of returning to the cave, Yang Kai went directly to Heavenly Fate City, which was 50 kilometers away. Heavenly Fate City was one of the forces under Shadow Moon Hall, so even if the Haiku family was nearby, they didn't have full control over it. This was because the entire city was very rich, not something a small family in the periphery could occupy. The Haiku family only operated a few businesses in the city, earning some cultivation materials from the cultivator who passed by. After entering Heavenly Fate City, Yang Kai found that this place was bustling with people and shops everywhere. In terms of prosperity, it was not inferior to the cities on Rainfall Star or Water Moon Star, perhaps even more so. Most of the owners of these shops were disciples of Shadow Moon Hall, but there were also people from Shadow Moon Hall's affiliated forces. Here, they were able to make a lot of money, so every shop was a cash cow. There were no guards at the city gates to collect crystal stones, so Shadow Moon Hall allowed anyone to enter and leave the city freely. Along the way, Yang Kai was in high spirits, his pace neither fast nor slow as he strolled through the various shops. Soon, Yang Kai was surprised to discover that in this city, or even all of Shadowed Star, the value of Saint crystals was much higher than that of other cultivation stars. For example, a bottle of Origin warming pills would cost 300 low-rank Saint crystals on other cultivation stars, but here, it only cost 200. An item worth 500 low-rank Saint crystals would only cost 400 or so. Isolation from the outside world allowed Shadowed Star to have its own way of calculating the value of Saint crystals. The scarcity of Saint crystals made the value of Saint crystals even greater. Very few Saint crystals could be exchanged for many things. Yang Kai was very excited. Because in his black book space, there were more than 47,000 high-rank Saint crystals, and the conversion rate between Saint crystals of different qualities was 1 to 5. In other words, one high-rank Saint crystal could be exchanged for 5 mid-rank Saint crystals, and one mid-rank Saint crystal could be exchanged for 5 low-rank Saint crystals. In total, Yang Kai had 1,000,000 low-rank Saint crystals, so he could buy anything he wanted. Yang Kai only bought some ores and materials he needed. After that, Yang Kai went to a place called Artifact Refining Pavilion. Whether it was Tongxian Realm or Star Territory, as long as there was a city with a high concentration of cultivator, such a place would definitely exist. Because not every cultivator knew how to refine artifacts, they would often find skilled artifact refiners to help them. In this way, not only would these artifact refiners have the opportunity to practice their craft, but they would also be able to obtain a good reward. Heavenly Fate City's Artifact Refining Pavilion was also a subsidiary of Shadow Moon Hall. Most of the several dozen artifact refiners here were members of Shadow Moon Hall, while some were hired. These hired artifact refiners would receive a share of the rewards from Shadow Moon Hall. Although most of the rewards would be taken by Shadow Moon Hall, such people were relatively free and could leave at any time without being subject to the jurisdiction of Shadow Moon Hall. When Yang Kai arrived, he was shocked by the lively scene inside. There were at least 200 cultivators of varying strength waiting in line, waiting for the artifact refiners of Artifact Refining Pavilion to refine artifacts for them. As soon as Yang Kai appeared, he was met with cold and hot gazes. Some people were even quite vigilant, as if they were afraid that Yang Kai would cut the line. This scene reminded him of the crowd outside the 9 Peaks when 9 Heavens Holy Land was helping people with alchemy. At that time, many people were willing to wait for 1 to 2 months or even longer outside the 9 Peaks to ask the alchemists of the Holy Land to refine pills for them. At this moment, Yang Kai couldn't help but feel the helplessness and anxiety of those people. Will I have to wait for a long time? Yang Kai couldn't help but frown. A man who looked like a shop assistant came over. He wasn't young, but his strength wasn't high. It seemed that he had given up on his own cultivation and was only working here to earn some remuneration to make a living. He enthusiastically handed Yang Kai a piece of paper and smiled, "Take a look and choose for yourself. If there's anything you don't understand, don't hesitate to ask me." Yang Kai took the paper suspiciously, and after looking at it for a while, he found that the names of the dozens of artifact refiners in Artifact Refining Pavilion were written on it, along with their abilities, charging standards, and a number. Yang Kai asked around and learned that the number indicated how many cultivator were waiting for this artifact refiner to refine an artifact. Glancing around, Yang Kai found that the most powerful person had more than 30 cultivator waiting, and this person's greatest ability was to refine Saint King grade high-rank artifact. No wonder so many people wanted to ask him for help. Artifact refiners were the same as alchemists in that they had their own ranking system. The higher their rank, the more high-grade artifacts or pills they could refine. It wasn't easy for a cultivator to find materials. Gathering the materials for an artifact was even more difficult than gathering the materials for a pill, so when choosing an artifact refiner, one would be extremely cautious. They would rather choose the expensive than the poor. This artifact refiner who could refine Saint King grade high-rank artifacts didn't charge a low fee, but with his rank, it was only natural that these cultivator would flock to him. Yang Kai's eyes swept over the names of these artifact refiners one by one and soon stopped at the name of one named Yang Inflammation. Frowning for a moment, Yang Kai waved to the shop assistant. "Has honored guest chosen an artifact refiner who will be responsible for refining your artifact?" The shop assistant ran over with a smile. "Is there something wrong with the information on this?" Yang Kai asked. The shop assistant still smiled. Honored guest is worrying too much. Our artifact refining pavilion is a property of Shadow Moon Hall. Most of the artifact refiners here are disciples of Shadow Moon Hall. Their methods and abilities have all passed the assessment of Shadow Moon Hall. Their prices are fair and honest, There is no suspicion of fraud. Yang Kai looked at him deeply before handing the piece of paper to him and pointing to it. Look at this. This guy named Young Inflammation charges such a high fee, and he says he can refine origin-grade artifacts, so why doesn't anyone patronize him? The number behind Young Inflammation was clearly 0, which meant that no one was waiting in line for his artifact refining. Compared with his leisurely appearance, the other artifact refiners were simply bustling with activity. The shop assistant smiled strangely and said, Honored guest, the credibility of Artifact Refining Pavilion is only guaranteed by the artifact refiners from Shadow Moon Hall. As for the external hired artifact refiners, we cannot guarantee the accuracy of the information they provide. We don't have that kind of free time. When this Grandmaster Young Inflammation came to Artifact Refining Pavilion, we also told him this, but he insisted that he can refine origin-grade artifacts. If honored guest doesn't believe this, please don't choose him. If there is any loss, we won't pay for it. We have many other artifact refiners to choose from. Listening to this shop assistant's words, Yang Kai immediately understood that this should be a way for Shadow Moon Hall to suppress external artifact refiners. Artifact Refining Pavilion's credibility was not guaranteed to the hired artifact refiners, so any cultivator who came to refine an artifact would have some misgivings and would not choose them. The other artifact refiners. Yang Kai frowned and slowly shook his head. The other artifact refiners all had busy schedules, and even the fastest one would take a dozen or so days. Is honored guest in a hurry? If you are in a hurry, you can leave the materials here and come back to pick them up when they are finished, the shop assistant made a suggestion. Yang Kai did not answer and instead asked, has anyone asked this guy named Young Inflammation to refine something? Yes. What was the result? The shop assistant's face suddenly twitched as a strange look appeared on his face. After a long time, he finally said, Honored guest, I suggest you find another Grandmaster to refine an artifact for you. Their fees are also more reasonable, unlike this one. Even this shop assistant didn't seem to be very optimistic about this artifact refiner called Young Inflammation, which made Yang Kai very puzzled. He didn't know how bad this Young Inflammation's skills were. While they were talking, an extremely tall and sturdy man walked out of a room while cursing. He had a murderous look on his face, and he held a sledgehammer in his hand. He looked very majestic. He cursed as he walked out of the room, looking extremely angry. Someone dared to curse an artifact refiner? Yang Kai was stunned. Artifact refiners and alchemists were a rare group of people with noble status. No matter who a cultivator offended, they would never offend these two groups of people, because no matter which cultivator it was, they needed artifacts and pills. Offending them was tantamount to cutting off their own path of retreat. On the other hand, the cultivator waiting in the hall seemed to be used to this scene, as if it was not the first time they had seen such a scene. Not only did no one try to persuade him, they even looked over with interest. Chapter 1102. The burly man cursed as he walked out, soon disappearing from sight. That Grandmaster Young Inflammation is looking for a scolding again, someone in the hall laughed gloatingly. He can't even refine a Saint King grade artifact properly, yet he still dares to brag about being an origin grade artifact refiner. If all the artifact refiners in this world are like this, who can guarantee the quality of our artifacts? That's right, I heard that a few days ago, someone brought an artifact he had been using for several dozen years to Grandmaster Young Inflammation and asked him to refine it. It was originally an excellent Saint King grade high-rank artifact, but after being refined, it dropped a level and became a Saint King grade mid-rank artifact. The owner of that artifact cried his heart out, how pitiful, what's wrong with that? I also heard that someone asked Grandmaster Young Inflammation to refine a sword-shaped artifact, but he only refined it into a heavy machete. An artifact refiner who can't meet the requirements of our cultivator, how can he be considered a qualified artifact refiner? I think his skill level is quite limited. How could Artifact Refining Pavilion hire such a poor artifact refiner? This has nothing to do with Artifact Refining Pavilion. Grandmaster Young Inflammation is just a hired artifact refiner. All those who go to him for artifact refining are told the truth by Artifact Refining Pavilion staff, but there are still people who are deceived. It can only be said that those people are stupid and greedy for the weight of an origin-grade artifact refiner. In any case, I'd rather wait a few months than ask that person for artifact refining. All kinds of words entered his ears, causing young Kai's expression to become more and more strange. The staff also sighed to the side. Grandmaster Young Inflammation is really a maverick. Our artifact refining pavilion has warned him many times, but he still remains stubborn and unrepentant. It looks like he'll have to leave in a few days. Why? Young Kai turned to look at him. His actions will cause some damage to Artifact Refining Pavilion's reputation. Naturally, we can't tolerate him here. But I saw the sledgehammer artifact that the quality of that burly man just took out was very good. It also fits his physique and Saint Chi attribute, so why isn't he satisfied? The shop assistant laughed. That warrior wants to refine not a sledgehammer, but a sledgehammer. Young Kai's face darkened. He immediately understood why the burly man was so furious. Indeed, it was as those voices had said, a refiner who couldn't meet the requirements of a cultivator was not a good refiner. Sir, have you made your choice? The waiter looked at Young Kai and asked. I've chosen. Young Kai nodded and handed the piece of paper back. Grandmaster Young Yang. The shop assistant was stunned for a moment before he asked in a strange tone, Are you sure? Young Kai smiled. What I want to refine is not an artifact, but something very simple. No matter how bad he is, he should be able to refine it. Since that's the case, I won't say anything more. Please come this way. The shop assistant no longer tried to dissuade him and led Young Kai to the room on the other side. Stopping in front of the room, he motioned to Young Kai to go in by himself and said meaningfully, Good luck. Young Kai couldn't help laughing and stepped inside. The room was very large, covering an area of 1,000 meters. Inside the room was a huge furnace with a figure sitting cross-legged behind it. This should be the so-called Grandmaster Young Inflammation. The curses of the burly man just now didn't affect him in the slightest. His aura was calm, like an ancient well, and only the sound of his even breathing could be heard. Young Kai walked over to a cushion in front of the furnace and sat down. Immediately, Grandmaster Young Inflammation's voice came from behind the furnace. What do you want to refine? Young Kai was stunned and couldn't help tilting his body and looking at Young Inflammation from the side of the furnace. Because he found that this artifact refiner named Young Inflammation was actually a woman. Moreover, her voice was sweet and pleasing to the ear, making people feel refreshed. He really wanted to know what a woman with such a sweet voice looked like. At first glance, Young Kai was very disappointed. He only saw a pair of bright eyes looking at him in the darkness. Young Inflammation was wrapped in a huge black robe, so he couldn't see his face or figure. Everyone is like this. Are you here to refine artifacts or to look at people? Young Inflammation muttered discontentedly. Young Kai looked embarrassed and immediately understood that everyone who came here was as curious as him. Embarrassed, he said, Sorry, I was just a little curious. I thought Grandmaster Young Inflammation was a man. Young Inflammation didn't mind and continued to ask, What do you want to refine? Young Kai replied, I want to refine a few simple things, not artifacts. I'll draw them for you to see. Saying so, he picked up the pen and paper that had already been prepared next to the futon and quickly drew a few strange things. When a cultivator was refining, they would put forward their own requirements. They would have their own idea of what an artifact would look like, so the pen and paper would definitely be prepared. After he finished drawing, Young Kai handed it over. Young Inflammation took it and looked at it. He seemed to be very surprised and asked, You want to arrange a spirit array? Young Kai was stunned. Just from the shape of this thing, you can see it. Young Inflammation sneered, How difficult is that? The things you want to refine have no other use except for arranging a spirit array. If I can't see it, then wouldn't I be blind? Do you understand spirit arrays? Not very good. Young Kai honestly shook his head. Although he was sure that he could arrange a spirit array, he couldn't guarantee how effective it would be. Perhaps the effect would be very subtle. If you don't understand, then don't fiddle around blindly. It's a waste of money. The ores and materials needed to refine these things are worth a lot of money, Young Inflammation said lightly. Young Kai suddenly became unhappy. Arranging a spirit array is my business. Refining these things is your business. I will pay you. He finally understood why this young inflammation was so lonely. She seemed to like meddling in other people's business. Such a person was destined to be disliked. To young Kai's surprise, this woman didn't try to refute, remaining silent for a while before suddenly saying, "How about this? I'll help you refine these things and even arrange a very good spirit array for you. How about you pay me? You can arrange a spirit array? Can? You're not lying, right? Why would I lie to you?" Young Inflammation said disdainfully, "Wait until I arrange a spirit array and you're satisfied with it. I don't want much. Seeing that your strength isn't high, you shouldn't be rich either. How about 100 high-rank Saint crystals? If you can take it out, I'll go with you right now. Are you short on Saint crystals?" Young Kai suddenly became vigilant, feeling that this woman was a bit too kind. He had only come here to ask her to refine a few simple things, yet she had actually taken the initiative to offer to arrange a spirit array for him, which was quite unusual. "I'm an artifact refiner, of course I'm short on Saint crystals. Buying those artifact refining materials requires a lot of Saint crystals. Aren't artifact refiners very rich? How could they be short on Saint crystals?" Young Kai was confused. The richest people in the world were either artifact refiners or alchemists. These two kinds of people never had to worry about money. At the very least, young Kai had never had such an experience. Alchemy was a rare craft that could be used anywhere. "Look at my situation. Do I look like someone who has a lot of Saint crystals?" In the darkness, young Inflammation rolled her eyes at young Kai. Young Kai immediately understood. No one had come to her for artifact refining, so naturally she had no gains. The vigilance in his heart eased a little as he asked worriedly, "If you just leave like this, will there be any problems?" "There's no problem. I only have an employment relationship with Artifact Refining Pavilion, so I can leave at any time. They can't wait for me to leave so I don't ruin their reputation, a bunch of mediocre people." After thinking about it for a while, young Kai nodded and said, "Good, if you can arrange a spirit array that satisfies me, I'll pay you 100 high-rank Saint crystals." "Then let's go," young Inflammation said, putting the huge furnace in front of her into her space ring and slowly standing up. Kai Yong looked her up and down. Although he still couldn't see her face, he found that this woman's figure was petite. Her head only reached his shoulders, but she had a pair of luxurious twin peaks, towering and shaking, which was very eye-catching. Exquisite and full, young Kai couldn't help but stare at her a few more times. Leaving the room, young Inflammation asked young Kai to wait outside while she went alone to a room in Artifact Refining Pavilion. After a short time, she walked out with a relaxed look on her face and gestured to young Kai to lead the way. Young Kai didn't speak any nonsense and flew off on his star shuttle with young Inflammation following closely behind. After the two left, the Artifact Refining Pavilion seemed to burst into cheers as many cultivator celebrated that Grandmaster Young Inflammation had finally left and would no longer cause trouble for others. Even the shop assistant who had received young Kai couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief as he stood at the entrance of Artifact Refining Pavilion and waved to young Inflammation, as if saying goodbye and wanting her to go as far away as possible. On the way to Dragon Cave Mountain, young Kai and young Inflammation flew side by side, but strangely, young Kai felt that this woman's eyes were intentionally or unintentionally staring at him, a look of eagerness flashing across her beautiful eyes. Young Kai didn't care at first, but when she kept staring at him like this, young Kai felt a little uncomfortable and couldn't help asking, "What are you looking at me for?" Young Inflammation raised her eyes and curled her lips, "Who's looking at you?" "Then why are you staring at me?" "I'm looking at the star shuttle under your feet." Young Inflammation snorted, "A Saint King grade high-rank star shuttle, not bad. Do you want me to refine it? I guarantee I can improve its performance by another 10%, provided you can find enough materials. You'll also have to pay me a certain amount of remuneration." Young Kai almost fell off his star shuttle, but after calming himself down, he stared at her suspiciously and asked, "You're not really an origin-grade artifact refiner, are you?" Refining an artifact and refining it were two completely different tasks. The former was much more difficult. A person who could refine a Saint-grade high-rank artifact was at least an Origin-grade low-rank artifact refiner. Since young Inflammation dared to say such a thing, it meant she had the ability to do so. Of course I am. As soon as her artifact refiner grade was mentioned, young Inflammation puffed up her towering chest, her pretty face filled with pride. Outside, young Kai discovered that this woman's appearance was as sweet as her voice. She was the kind of woman who looked innocent and harmless, easily giving others a good impression of her. Chapter 1103. Young Inflammation looked harmless on the surface, but young Kai wasn't familiar with her, so naturally he wouldn't naively believe her words. Since you're an Origin-grade artifact refiner, why are you so miserable? Because no one believes me. Young Inflammation pouted her red lips aggrievedly. No one dares to ask me to refine a high-grade artifact. Those who do ask me to refine them are all trash, so naturally I receive very little compensation. When I was in the Hall of Artifact Refining Pavilion just now, I heard someone say that you tempered a Saint King grade high-rank artifact into a Saint King grade mid-rank artifact. Young Kai looked at her with a strange look. To young Kai's surprise, young Inflammation actually nodded and admitted, that guy's cultivation is only a third-order saint, so even if he had a Saint King grade high-rank artifact, he wouldn't be able to display its full power. A Saint King grade mid-rank artifact is his bottom line. I lowered the grade of that artifact, but when he fights, his combat effectiveness will increase. When his cultivation improves, he can come to me and raise the grade of that artifact. I also heard that you refined a long sword into a machete. What does he know? The secret art he cultivates, martial skills, and even his Saint Chi attribute all belong to the Grand Melee category. The long sword is too ethereal, making it impossible for him to fully display his advantages. Using a machete is the way to go. Once he uses it for a while, he'll understand my good intentions and will be grateful to me. Young Kai sighed, not knowing whether to believe this woman's words or not. If what she said was true, then she really was an Origin-grade artifact refiner, an extremely rare talent. After all, she was so young. It was also because she looked so young, even younger than young Kai, that no one would believe she was an Origin-grade artifact refiner. Whether this was true or false, young Kai couldn't figure it out. Young Inflammation, you can't do this. As an artifact refiner, the most important thing is to satisfy the cultivator's own needs, not refine an artifact according to your own ideas. You're not like others. How can you know what others want the most? It's easy for you to make decisions like this to cause problems. Young Inflammation looked even more aggrieved and muttered, but I can't stand to see those people waste good materials. Young Kai shook his head and no longer said anything. A short time later, the two arrived in front of Dragon Cave Mountain and landed. Young Kai was surprised to find that Yu Feng was leading a group of people in and out of the cave's cave, seemingly transporting something. Seeing Kai Young arrive, Yu Feng ran over with a big grin on his face and affectionately patted Kai Young's shoulder. I heard from the young lady that you want to stay? Staying is also good. In any case, you have no relatives on Shadowed Star, so if you stay and work with young lady, you'll be able to bring glory to your ancestors in the future. Young lady asked us to help you decorate the cave. All of our brothers are busy, Yu Feng said as he pointed to the cultivator entering and exiting the cave. These people were all cultivators from the starship. Taking out a space ring, Yu Feng handed it to young Kai and said, "This is the ring you used to wear. Inside it is a small token of appreciation from our brothers. Since everyone has contributed, we'll all be family in the future. There aren't many things, so don't mind." Young Kai took it and swept it with his divine sense, finding that there were a few hundred low-rank saint crystals and a few bottles of commonly used healing pills inside. There really weren't many things here, not even on the same level as the one he had been robbed, but young Kai still accepted it solemnly and nodded his thanks. It wasn't until this moment that Yu Feng seemed to notice the existence of young Inflammation and exclaimed as he stared straight at young Inflammation, grinning ambiguously, "Little brat, you're really amazing, bringing back a woman from outside in such a short time? Where did you find her?" "Not bad, tell big brother, I'll go look for her too." Young Inflammation's face went cold as he glared at Yu Feng fiercely. Yu Feng smiled awkwardly. Young Kai explained, "This is Grandmaster Young Inflammation. Grandmaster? Yu Feng was stunned. What Grandmaster? I invited her from Artifact Refining Pavilion. She's proficient in artifact refining and has come to help me arrange a spirit array. Artifact refiner? Yu Feng immediately put away his frivolous smile and his attitude became much more serious, looking young Inflammation up and down before cupping his fists and saying, "This Yu has been rude, please don't take offense." Although Yu Feng didn't look serious or reliable, he also knew that artifact refiners had noble status. Although young Inflammation didn't look very old, he didn't dare treat her carelessly because no one could guarantee that this woman wouldn't become an outstanding artifact refiner in the future. If things didn't go well, he might have to ask her for help in the future. Young Inflammation's face became slightly pale as she gently nodded. Yu Feng then said, "Since Miss is an artifact refiner, can you help me refine an artifact?" "Sure." Young Inflammation's beautiful eyes lit up as she readily agreed. "What grade? What kind of artifact do you want me to refine?" "I'll leave you to it. I'll go in and take a look." Yang Kai couldn't bear to see Yu Feng's expectant look and quickly found an excuse to enter the cave. Inside the cave, many cultivators went in and out, bustling about. During the past few months aboard the starship, Yang Kai had gotten along quite well with this group of people. Some of them were familiar with him while others he didn't know were familiar with. Under Wu Yi's orders, these cultivators came to help Yang Kai tidy up the cave. None of them showed any signs of resistance and were instead quite enthusiastic. People constantly greeted Yang Kai and Yang Kai thanked them one by one. After walking around the cave, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling a slight warmth in his heart. The cave had been completely transformed. In the stone room Yang Kai had chosen as his bedroom, there were now beds, chairs, and benches. The corridor was decorated with strange stones used for illumination, dispelling the darkness inside. Other places had also been more or less renovated, making the corridor more spacious and livable. It was obvious that these people had worked very hard. Some of them even patted Yang Kai on the shoulder with a smile, telling him that if he ever felt wronged or bullied in the future, he could come to the Haiku family manor to find them and they would stick up for Yang Kai. Yang Kai nodded with a smile. After walking around the cave for a while, Yang Kai was very satisfied with the interior transformation and walked out. Yu Feng stood there, muttering something under his breath while Young Inflammation was nowhere to be seen. "Where's that woman?" Yang Kai walked up and asked. "Oh, she said she was going to explore the nearby terrain and will be back soon," Yu Feng replied casually. Yu Feng nodded casually before his expression suddenly became bitter. "Yang Kai, I only asked her to help me refine a spirit-grade artifact, and I even found all the necessary materials, so why did she charge me 50 low-rank Saint crystals? Isn't that a bit too much? You get what you pay for." Yang Kai patted him on the shoulder and said earnestly, "Admit it, you came to me yourself, it's too late to regret now." Yu Feng was annoyed. "If I had known earlier, I would have gone to Heavenly Fate City's artifact refining pavilion to find someone to refine it for me. I only asked for half the reward, what a waste. Forget it, seeing that little girl's poor appearance, I'll just take pity on her and take care of her business. I just hope she won't ruin my artifact." "She won't ruin it, but I don't know what she'll refine. By the way, what do you want a spirit-grade artifact for?" Yang Kai didn't understand. Yu Feng was a first-order Saint King Realm cultivator, so he had no use for spirit-grade artifacts. Only Yuan Qi or Immortal Ascension boundary cultivators could use them. "I'll give it to a little brat," Yu Feng grinned. After waiting for a while, Young Inflammation returned. Without saying a word, he took out a pen and paper from his space ring and began drawing something on it, frowning from time to time as he fell into contemplation. Yang Kai and Yu Feng stood to the side, not bothering to disturb him. After the time it would take to drink a cup of tea, Young Inflammation looked at the paper in his hand and nodded with satisfaction, handing it to Yang Kai and saying, "Follow the marks on this and modify the nearby terrain slightly. Since there are so many of you, if you work together, it should only take a day." Yang Kai took the paper and, together with Yu Feng, both took a look. Yu Feng didn't see anything special, but Yang Kai was shocked and immediately understood that Young Inflammation really did have some skill. Regardless of her accomplishments in artifact refining, her spirit arrays were definitely much better than his own. If the terrain was modified according to the markings on the map, it would be much easier to set up the formation. After the formation was completed, the effect would be even more outstanding. Understood. Yang Kai put away the paper and turned to Yu Feng. I'll have to trouble you for a day. Yu Feng nodded. You're too polite. Since young lady has asked us to help you, naturally we'll do our best. Wait here, I'll go call the others. After Yu Feng left, Yang Inflammation said, Can you understand the marks on this paper? Seeing Yang Kai nod, she nodded and said, Then you go command them, I'll refine what I need first. Ien, give me the materials. Yang Kai took out all the materials he had purchased before and handed them to Yang Inflammation. Yu Feng led a group of people out of the cave, and after Yang Kai explained what they were going to do, everyone expressed that they had no problem with it. Dragon Cave Mountain suddenly became lively as several dozen cultivator groups of 3 to 5 began digging ditches, leveling hills, or cutting down excess trees, meticulously carrying out the modifications requested by Yang Inflammation according to the drawings she had drawn. None of them were ordinary people, so naturally, they were quick to complete the task of modifying the terrain, all of them completing it in less than a day. By the time everyone returned to the cave, Yang Inflammation had already finished the final preparations. Seeing her run out with a few strange things in hand, everyone was confused as to what she wanted to do. She simply nodded to Yang Kai before flying out. Everyone only saw her petite figure shuttling through the mountains, landing on a mountain from time to time as she busied herself. Yu Feng scratched his head and asked with a puzzled look, Yang Kai, what kind of spirit array are you arranging? Why is it so expensive? You'll know soon enough. Yang Kai didn't say anything and simply waited with a smile. He was now full of confidence in the spirit array arranged by Yang Inflammation. When Yang Inflammation arrived at the last mountain and busied herself for a while, everyone saw her fly up and stand mid-air, waving her small hand. Success! Yang Kai shouted and raised his hand in response. Yang Inflammation quickly flew back. Chapter 1104. The flow of world energy in the surrounding area seemed to have undergone some subtle changes. The several dozen kilometers around the cave slowly exuded an invisible suction force that gathered the surrounding world energy. It wasn't strong, but it was continuous. Yu Feng's expression changed as he quickly asked, You arranged a spirit gathering array? Yang Kai nodded with a smile. Amazing. You can arrange a spirit gathering array without using saint crystals? Yu Feng shouted while the other cultivators also looked towards Yang Yang, who was flying back from the distance, with looks of admiration. The Haiku family also had some secret places that were rich in world energy and specifically used for the cultivation of the family's disciples, but the arrangement of these places had cost the Haiku family a huge amount of financial and human resources and required a considerable amount of saint crystals and other rare materials to maintain. However, the arrangement of this spirit-gathering array on Dragon Cave Mountain was something that Yu Feng and the others had all participated in, yet Yang Kai and Yang Inflammation hadn't used too many materials, nor had they seen any saint crystals, which was somewhat incredible. The terrain here is quite good. If it wasn't, it wouldn't have been possible to arrange it, Yang Kai explained casually. Moreover, its effect will be tested over time. Yang Kai really didn't know what the effect of this newly arranged spirit array would be. Perhaps it would be just passable, but since this was just a place for him to settle down, he hadn't invested too much effort into it, so even if the effect wasn't good, he wouldn't be disappointed. Time. As long as there is enough time, this place will become the place with the richest world energy within 1,000 kilometers, and as time goes by, the world energy will only become richer and richer. Yang Inflammation, who had flown back, was full of confidence in her masterpiece. Your cultivator here really doesn't have good vision. This mountain is a very powerful crouching dragonland, yet you didn't know how to make use of it. Crouching Dragonland? Yang Kai looked at her suspiciously. It's the name of a special terrain. Yang Inflammation replied casually, even if I explained it to you, you wouldn't understand. All you need to know is that this place is very suitable for arranging a spirit gathering array. It's called Dragon Cave Mountain, right? Yu Feng nodded. Ien, the name isn't without reason, it's just that I haven't met anyone who knows what's good for me. Yang Inflammation raised her small face proudly, as if she was the only one in the world who knew what was good for her. Yang Kai and Yu Feng looked at each other for a moment before Yang said, "Do you want to tell Wu Yi about this place mountain? She said that she gave this mountain to me. If she wants to take it back now, I don't mind." Yang Kai's Yu Feng's is. Yang Kai's Yang Kai, Yu Feng smiled, Yang Kai's Yang Kai Yu Feng grinned. "You can stay here without worry. If you need anything, just come to the manor and find us. If the spirit chi here is really rich in the future, I want to stay here too. At that time, just don't chase me away." Yu Feng and the group of cultivators then returned to the Haiku family. Now that the spirit array had been fully arranged, Yang Inflammation's work had also come to an end. According to their previous agreement, Yang Kai took out 100 high-rank saint crystals and handed them to her as a reward for helping him arrange the spirit array. Yang Inflammation accepted them without any trace of politeness and began counting the saint crystals one by one, a silly grin appearing on her face. Yang Kai shook his head, no longer paying attention to her, turned around, and walked into the cave's only stone room, took out the 7-colored spirit-gathering flags, and arranged them according to a certain pattern nearby. These 7-colored spirit-gathering flags were artifacts Yang Kai had obtained from the middle-aged woman from Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce's branch on Rainfall Star. They were specifically used to assist one's cultivation and had surprisingly good effects. The reason why Yang Kai didn't care much about Yang Inflammation's spirit-gathering array was because of these 7-colored spirit-gathering flags. If the spirit-gathering array didn't have much effect, he could still use these artifacts to gather world energy, but if the spirit-gathering array was effective, it would be even better. Using both methods at the same time, the speed at which Yang Kai could gather world energy would be much faster. Just as he finished arranging the 7 different colored flags, Yang Inflammation quietly appeared, her large robes covering her entire body as she squatted down and stared straight at one of the flags, a strange light flashing across her beautiful eyes that was somewhat frightening to look at. "Why haven't you left yet?" Yang Kai was surprised. "I still need to refine a spirit-grade artifact for Yu Feng, we agreed on that before." Yang Inflammation replied quickly before turning a fiery gaze towards Yang Kai and asking anxiously, "An origin-grade low-rank artifact? Where did you get it? You're only a third-order saint, how could you have such a high-grade artifact?" Yang Kai frowned, "Someone gave it to me as a gift. Do you want to refine it? Do you want me to help you refine these 7 flags? Aya, there are a lot of impurities in them, if I refine them, I can increase their effectiveness by at least 15%. Her eyes became even more fiery, even containing a hint of madness. Yang Kai's face went black. He finally realized that when this woman saw a high-grade artifact, it was as if she had become a completely different person. No matter what kind of artifact it was, in her eyes, it could be refined and improved, but he didn't know if this was true or not. Yang Kai didn't know what her abilities were, so naturally he wouldn't take any risks. These 7-colored spirit-gathering flags were the biggest help to his future cultivation. How could he allow her to refine them casually? Quickly shaking his head, he refused. Yang Inflammation couldn't help showing a look of disappointment, her small mouth pursing as she muttered discontentedly, "None of you believe in my ability. If none of you are willing to try, how can you know how powerful I am?" She spoke in a pitiful tone, her hot-bloodedness going down the drain. As she spoke, she glanced towards Yang Kai, seemingly hoping he would change his mind. "Don't you have anywhere to go?" Yang Kai suddenly asked. Yang Inflammation froze for a moment before innocently changing the subject. "If you don't have anywhere to go, you can find a place to stay here. In any case, I'm the only one here right now. I can live here." Yang Inflammation was pleasantly surprised. "I'll say this first, don't bother me if you have nothing to do." Yang Kai waved his hand. Yang Inflammation immediately ran off, and a moment later, Yang Kai felt a familiar aura from somewhere in the cave. It was the fluctuations of Yang attribute energy. This woman cultivates a Yang attribute secret art? Yang Kai's eyes flashed a look of surprise, but he really didn't know that an artifact refiner like her cultivated a Yang attribute secret art. The strange thing was, why was she so miserable? No matter which artifact refiner or alchemist, as long as they joined a decent force, they would be well taken care of, have a high status, and have a bright future ahead of them, but this woman was clearly extremely poor. She had even agreed to refine Yu Feng's spirit-grade artifact for the reward of 50 low-rank saint crystals. Yang Kai would have to ask her some other day if she had committed some kind of taboo and had been expelled by some great force. If that was the case, accommodating her would be troublesome, so he would have to cut off all contact with her as soon as possible. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai soon discovered that Yang Inflammation was somewhere in the cave, using her own strength to melt the cave walls. It seemed she was trying to create a stone room. Ignoring her, Yang Kai began to inspect his own supplies. Since entering the body-tempering divine pond and being wrapped in the blood-red crystal, Yang Kai hadn't had the time to investigate his gains until now. Taking out a number of space rings from his sleeve, Yang Kai found a total of 3, one belonging to the dead Gui Che, Luo Yarrow, and Gan Ji. Inside Gui Che's space ring was a thunder attribute birdwood. This was the crystallization of the 10th order monster beast Thunder Luan's essence, chi, and soul after it died. Its trunk was wrapped in lightning and was of extraordinary quality. If it was used to refine an artifact, it would definitely produce a powerful thunder attribute artifact. The several dozen crystal clear leaves filled with thunder attribute energy were also treasures. Yang Kai was overjoyed and stored this bird wood into the demon mystic tome. Next, he took out a purple hard shell from Gui Che's space ring. This was the hard shell of a 9th order monster beast, the scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion. It could be used to refine a defensive artifact, so Yang Kai continued to store it in the demon mystic tome to become the demon race's demon mystic tome. Taking out one item after another, collecting them one by one, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling excited. The harvest of that adventure had basically been obtained by him alone. In addition to the scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion's pincer assigned to Ji Peng, the scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion's tail, various monster cores, and various other monster beast materials were now all in Yang Kai's bag. In addition, the 3 of them had collected countless herbs along the way. They weren't very rich, so some of the artifacts they had originally placed in their space rings weren't very high grade, so Yang Kai didn't care about them and simply threw them into the demon mystic tome. The harvest was great, but these things weren't useful for the time being. Yang Kai suddenly realized that if Yang Inflammation was really an origin-grade artifact refiner, he really had something to ask of her. At the very least, the hard shell of the scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion could be used to refine a defensive artifact from her, which was what Yang Kai wanted. However, the extent of her ability still needed to be tested. A day later, Yu Feng came again and took the spirit-grade artifact he had asked Yang Yang to help him refine before leaving happily. Over the next few days, Wu Yi's subordinates came here in groups of 3 or 5, bringing the materials they had collected or the artifacts they wanted Yang Inflammation to help them refine them. Everyone was looking forward to it, and everyone's requests were fully met. Yang Inflammation seemed to have gained an epiphany and no longer arbitrarily changed the shape or grade of the artifacts the cultivator used, instead strictly refining them according to their personal wishes. For a time, there was a flood of praise. Almost everyone in the Haiku family knew that there was an artifact refiner living in a cave on Dragon Cave Mountain. Although the remuneration she charged was a bit high, her skill was quite good. The artifacts she refined were all excellent, and the artifacts she refined could increase in power by at least 20 to 30%. Yang Kai didn't care because he lived in a relatively innermost position in the cave, so those who came to ask Yang Inflammation for help couldn't disturb him. The only thing that made Yang Kai feel indignant was that this woman would find an opportunity to come here every day, stare at the 7-colored spirit-gathering flags eagerly, and ask if she wanted to refine them. Although every time she received a negative answer, she seemed to be quite happy, as if she felt that her sincerity would one day move Yang Kai. Chapter 1105. Yang Yang was a very strange woman. In addition to being interested in high-grade artifacts, her biggest interest was saint crystals. Every time Yang Kai came out and passed by her stone room, he would see her counting her saint crystals, one by one, without a trace of annoyance. The stains on the low-rank saint crystals would be wiped clean by her, leaving behind a shiny luster that seemed to give her great satisfaction. Every time this happened, Yang Inflammation's face would fill with a deranged grin, and when she found Yang Kai staring at her strangely, she would quickly put away the saint crystals, as if she was afraid Yang Kai would snatch them away. This woman has gone mad, Yang Kai concluded. As time passed, fewer and fewer people came to the cave to seek out Yang Inflammation for artifact refining. The requests of those who came were all met, and Yang Inflammation's business gradually declined. On this day, Yang Kai was meditating when he suddenly heard Wu Yi call out to him from outside. Wu Yi had been busy with something recently and hadn't come out, but after hearing her voice, Yang Kai immediately walked out of the cave and saw her standing outside, so he quickly smiled and greeted her. "How is this place?" Wu Yi asked with a smile. "Very good." Yang Kai nodded, glancing at her face thoughtfully and discovering that she didn't seem very happy. "I heard Yu Feng say that you and a woman arranged a spirit gathering array here?" Wu Yi turned her head and looked around, feeling the rich world energy around her before taking a deep breath and saying, "The effect seems to be quite good. If I had known this place was so good, I would have found someone to arrange a spirit array here long ago. Yu Feng and the others still need to pay a certain amount of contribution points or saint crystals to enter the family to cultivate. Do you regret it?" Yang Kai looked at her calmly. Wu Yi rolled her eyes and pouted playfully. "Do I look like such a stingy person? Since I've said that I'm giving this mountain to you, then it's yours. No matter how good this place becomes, it has nothing to do with me. You can live here in peace. No one will dare to do anything to you." Yang Kai was just about to say something when he suddenly frowned and turned his head towards a certain direction. Off in the distance, a blue light flashed as someone on a star shuttle flew back and forth above Dragon Cave Mountain, seemingly inspecting something. "Someone from your family?" Yang Kai asked as he looked at the figure. "Ian, he's one of my family's stewards, you don't need to pay attention to him." Wu Yi also showed some displeasure. He came here this time to find that artifact refiner called Yang Inflammation. "Why are you looking for her?" Yang Kai was stunned. "She's a weapon refiner. Why do you think we need her?" Wu Yi smiled. "For a small family like ours, it's not easy to cultivate an artifact refiner. Now, there is a wandering artifact refiner here. Although she isn't very old, she is still worth recruiting. I heard from the family's disciples that she can refine saint-grade artifacts." The strength of the cultivator who had come to find Wu Yi during this time wasn't very high, the most powerful being Yu Feng. The grade of the artifacts they requested to refine was naturally not too outrageous, so the Haiku family had always believed that Yang Inflammation was a saint-grade artifact refiner. Now that there was a lone artifact refiner nearby, no matter what the grade of this artifact refiner was, the Haiku family felt that they should show their sincerity. Perhaps this artifact refiner would bring great benefits to the family, so they had sent someone over. "What's your relationship with that woman? I remember you saying that you didn't know anyone here, so how did you manage to bring back such a beauty in such a short time?" Wu Yi looked at Yang Kai mockingly, as if she was certain that there was some kind of unspeakable relationship between him and Yang Inflammation. "I'm not familiar with her. I just asked her to come back and help arrange the spirit array. After that, she refused to leave, so I was too embarrassed to drive her away. Ian, it would be best if you could recruit her. She's annoying me to death," Yang Kai complained bitterly. "Whether she can succeed or not is up to her, it's none of my business. I just came here today to see how you're doing." Wu Yi pursed her lips and smiled, not delving too deeply into this matter. A moment later, the steward from the Haiku family flew over and nodded to Wu Yi. "The world energy aura in this mountain is quite good. After a year or so I'm afraid it will be even better. I heard young lady gave this mountain away. Did you give it to him?" Saying so, he intentionally or unintentionally glanced over at Yang Kai, his eyes filled with contempt. Wu Yi frowned and said, "Uncle Ju didn't come here for this mountain, right? Do you have some other task?" The cultivator surnamed Ju smiled. "I was just asking casually. Young lady doesn't need to take offense." Glancing over at Yang Kai again, he crossed his arms behind his back and walked into the cave. "It's really annoying how they want to meddle in everything. I've never seen them care so much about this place before. My family has a territory of several tens of thousands of kilometers, but because I'm a woman, they assigned this barren mountain to me. Now that they see some benefits, they want to stick their hands in it. How infuriating," Wu Yi said angrily. Yang Kai fell silent. It was really not convenient for him to express his opinion on the internal affairs of others. Wu Yi no longer complained and with a smile on her pretty face began chatting with young Kai about her recent life, asking him if there was anything he needed. The two chatted happily, Wu Yi looking forward to her future ambitions, her beautiful eyes filled with expectation. After half a cup of tea's worth of time, Manager Ju suddenly walked out of the cave angrily and angrily shouted, "A little girl who doesn't know how to appreciate kindness, Vampage, does she really think she's so great? A trivial saint-grade artifact refiner, does she think my haiku family can't cultivate one? Shamelessly boasting about being an origin-grade artifact refiner, what a joke." He walked out angrily and without even saying goodbye to Wu Yi, summoned his star shuttle and flew off. Wu Yi's mouth fell open slightly, seemingly not having expected that this artifact refiner named Young Inflammation would actually refuse her family's offer. When she arrived, she had also seen the letter of appointment and felt that the conditions offered by her family weren't bad. Although it wasn't comparable to a great force like Shadow Moon Hall, it was still quite good for a small force. "The woman you brought back seems to have very high standards." Wu Yi looked at young Kai. "Steward Chow said she was an origin-grade artifact refiner. Isn't she only in her 20s? "I don't know, she claimed to be an origin-grade artifact refiner." Young Kai shook his head. "Interesting." Wu Yi pursed her lips and smiled. "Forget it, she's an artifact refiner, she has the right to choose, it's just that her words are a bit disagreeable. Ian, I still have something to do, I'll come see you later." After saying goodbye to Wu Yi, young Kai thought about it for a moment before walking back into the cave and arriving at Young Inflammation's stone room. Young Inflammation pursed her lips and looked towards young Kai, saying somewhat unhappily, "Why doesn't anyone believe I'm an origin-grade artifact refiner? How do you expect people to believe you?" Young Kai rubbed his forehead. "Give me a chance to prove myself, as long as they find me some origin-grade materials, I promise I can refine an origin-grade artifact," Young Inflammation shouted, her full chest heaving up and down, looking quite aggrieved. "Do you think origin-grade materials are cheap? This kind of thing could only be obtained by great forces. The Haiku family was just a small family, so even if they had such a thing, it would be extremely rare. How could they use it just to verify young Kai's abilities? What if young Kai destroyed their materials? If I told you I was a Saint King grade high-rank alchemist, would you believe me?" Young Kai looked at her seriously. Young Inflammation's beautiful eyes flashed as she looked him up and down, curling her lips slightly. "You?" Immediately after, she burst into laughter, as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world. Young Kai's face went black. He suddenly understood why no one believed Young Inflammation's words, just as Young Inflammation didn't believe his own words. Both of them were too young to match their noble titles. Saint King grade alchemists, origin grade artifact refiners, which one of them wasn't old? After understanding this, young Kai immediately realized that Young Inflammation might not be lying, nor was she deliberately using a false title to improve her status. She might really have such ability. "I'll ask you seriously, are you really an origin grade artifact refiner?" Young Kai stared at her with a scorching gaze. "Don't make me keep talking about this title, okay? Whether I am or not, can't you just find some materials for me? How about you let me refine your star shuttle or those 7 flags? If I fail to refine them, you can do whatever you want with them. You're only somewhat attractive because of your figure," young Kai said disdainfully. "Even if I sold you, I wouldn't be able to compensate for the loss of a failed refinement." Young Inflammation immediately ground her teeth, causing them to creak. "What can you refine with these materials?" Young Kai waved his hand and a large pile of materials suddenly appeared in front of Young Inflammation. Young Kai felt that it was time to test this woman's true ability. Young Inflammation, who was gritting her teeth and glaring at young Kai with hatred, suddenly opened her eyes wide and rushed over to the pile of materials, picking them up one after another in a pleasantly surprised manner. 8th order monster beast, thundercloud leopard's tooth, blazing blue flame rhinoceros horn, illusion cloud butterfly's wings, heavens, there's even a diamond dragon beetle's tentacle. Every time she picked one up, she could accurately call out the origin and name of these materials. She entered a state of madness in an instant, completely ignoring the unpleasant smell of these materials. She held them in her arms as if they were treasures. Her small arms were filled to the brim, and she kept picking them up from the ground. One after another, she dropped them, causing her to be at a loss of what to do. Picking up and calling out to pick up, Kai Yang suddenly discovered that her eyes had turned red. Large tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes, sliding down her cheeks to her chin. "Why are you crying?" Yang Kai was suddenly speechless. He found that this woman's brain was indeed a little abnormal. "I haven't seen so many precious materials in a long time." Yang Inflammation's shoulders trembled as she choked out, "They all thought I was lying. The materials I brought were all saint grade and below. The artifacts I brought were also the same. I didn't lie." "Don't cry. I'll give you a chance to prove yourself now. I don't care what you want to refine or what you want to refine. These materials are all yours to use." "Really?" Yang Inflammation raised her head and looked at Yang Kai with red eyes. Yang Kai nodded and said lightly, "I also want to know if you're lying or not." Chapter 1106. Hearing Yang Kai say that so many high-grade materials were under her control and that she could refine as she pleased, Yang immediately perked up, her eyes flashing a terrifying light as she rubbed the corners of her eyes and took a deep breath. "I won't let you down. The materials in my hands will never go to waste. I'll wait and see." "So many materials. Where did you get them from? Your strength isn't high. It's impossible for you to kill so many 8th order monster beast," Yang asked curiously. "I picked them up," Yang Kai said casually. These things had all been obtained from hunting monster beast with Gui Che and the others. They originally belonged to several people, but after they died, their space rings had all been picked up by Yang Kai. "Where did you pick them up?" "I want to pick them up too," Yang said with an eager expression as she stared at Yang Kai. Following Yang's instructions, Yang Kai took the list she had given him and went to Heavenly Fate City to buy a lot of ores. After all, artifact refining didn't just require a part of a monster beast's body, various ores were also necessary. After obtaining these ores, Yang immediately threw herself into the artifact refining business, completely sealing off the stone room where she lived, as if she didn't want to be disturbed. Yang Kai could clearly feel that there was a strong Yang attribute energy fluctuation coming from her stone room every day, but he didn't inquire about how it was progressing. All he wanted was the results. Through the results, he would be able to judge Yang's abilities. The materials taken out before were all things Yang Kai didn't think he could use and could only be sold. If Yang could really refine them into artifacts, their value would definitely increase. When the time came, he could sell them for more saint crystals. Even if they were destroyed, it didn't matter. In any case, Yang Kai didn't lack them. A month passed peacefully without any disturbances from Yang. During this time, Yang Kai's life was extremely leisurely. The spirit array on Dragon Cave Mountain was constantly working, and now, a faint mist had appeared over the entire mountain. This mist was a symbol of the gathering of world energy, and although it wasn't dense, it made Dragon Cave Mountain look somewhat like a spirit mountain. Over time, the world energy here would become more and more abundant. Wu Yi came over twice but seemed to be very unhappy with her family. Each time she came, she didn't do anything but chat with Yang Kai to ease her mood. A month later, Yang Kai was meditating in his stone room when he suddenly heard the door to Yang's artifact refining retreat open. Immediately, the sound of hurried footsteps came towards him. Looking up, Yang Kai saw Yang standing at the door with a flushed face, holding onto her large black robes with both hands, panting heavily as she stared at Yang Kai with an excited look on her face. "Can I come in?" Yang poked her head out and asked worriedly. Ever since she had annoyed Yang Kai by entering uninvited, Yang Kai had grabbed her by the neck and thrown her out. Yang had not dared to step into this stone room at will. Yang Kai nodded and couldn't help asking expectantly, "Have you finished refining?" Yang just smiled and said mysteriously, "Close your eyes first, I'll give you a surprise." "Since I've already said it, how could there be a surprise?" Kai Yang's expression was strange, but he still followed her words and closed his eyes. In the next moment, however, Yang Kai's face changed dramatically because a burst of energy fluctuations belonging to Saint King grade artifacts suddenly appeared in the stone room. Opening his eyes, Yang Kai saw Yang pointing to the neatly arranged artifacts in front of him with a proud expression. "The materials you provided, the ores you bought, I didn't waste them, all of the results are here, a total of 4 Saint King grade artifacts. Yang 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 sat down cross-legged and picked up a mace-shaped artifact, saying, "Let me introduce them to you. This one was refined from the teeth of the 8th order monster beast, Thunder Cloud Leopard, and some ores. These ores were used to refine the body of the club and the skull of the Thunder Cloud Leopard. The teeth of the Thunder Cloud Leopard are very strong and sharp, so I refined them into barbs. This kind of rough artifact is very suitable for strong men. Just holding this thing gives them a majestic appearance. This is a Saint King grade low-rank artifact." Finished speaking, she handed the mace-shaped artifact to Yang Kai. Yang Kai received it, examined it carefully, and nodded gently. It could be seen that Yang 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 had made the best use of this artifact. As long as it could find a suitable owner, it wouldn't be difficult to display its full power. This dagger was refined from the horn of a fiery blue flame rhinoceros. Although it's not very sharp, the fiery blue flame rhinoceros horn itself has some very special effects. It's best used to break barriers, so it's not meant to be used to kill enemies, but rather a must-have item for adventuring. I think many people will buy it. It's also a Saint King grade low-rank artifact, Yang Yang said, handing over a pale blue dagger to Yang Kai. He picked up another one and said, "This whip is made from the tentacles of the Vajra dragon beetle. It's the most difficult whip to refine. If you're not careful, you might destroy the material. Fortunately, I'm the one who did it. If it were another refiner, you'd be crying right now. This thing is suitable for girls to use. Since you obtained that tentacle, you should know how terrifying the diamond dragon beetle is. Let me tell you, once you're hit by this whip, it's not just your flesh that will be damaged, but your bones. If you're hit a few times, even your bones may break. This is a Saint King grade mid-rank artifact." Yang Kai took the soft whip from her hand, infused it with yuan qi and swung it a few times. Suddenly the stone room was filled with shadows of the whip. Yang Yang was so scared that her little face turned pale. She was afraid that Yang Kai would accidentally whip her. After waiting for Yang Kai to put away the soft whip, she excitedly picked up the last artifact. Her movements were very careful, as if she was picking up a work of art, her beautiful eyes filled with infatuation. "This is the work I'm most proud of this time." Yang Kai looked around and found that this thing was actually a pair of palm-sized wings. These wings flashed with a blurry light, their colors constantly changing, creating a beautiful sight. Needless to say, this artifact should have been refined from the wings of an illusionary cloud butterfly, and it was also of the highest grade, Saint King grade high rank. "The materials you gave me were originally only enough to refine a Saint King grade mid-rank artifact, but this time I exceeded my expectations and raised its grade to a whole new level. Heavens, I've always wanted to refine a pair of wing-shaped artifacts, but unfortunately I haven't been able to find the right materials." Yang 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 held the pair of wings and examined them carefully. The more she looked at them, the more satisfied she became. She didn't hand them over to Yang Kai, instead glancing over at Yang Kai from time to time. Even a blind man would be able to see the deep meaning in her eyes. Yang Kai stretched out his hand to her and Yang 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 reluctantly placed the pair of wings in his hand, saying nervously, "Be careful, don't break it." "Isn't this mine?" Yang Kai looked at her amusedly. "Yes, it's yours, but it was refined by me. I have a responsibility to ensure its safety. You're so extravagant. Is a Saint King grade high-rank artifact so easy to break?" Yang Kai chuckled. Yang 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 opened her mouth but didn't know what to say, quickly changing her mind and saying, "Although I can use a star shuttle to travel, this pair of wings can increase the speed of a cultivator in battle and can also be used as a form of protection at a critical moment. This thing is worth at least 30,000 high-rank Saint crystals. If you take it to auction, it will only fetch a higher price, perhaps even 40,000. There are too many rich people in this world, it's really hateful." As she spoke, she waved her small fists, as if she was annoyed with herself for being so poor. 30,000? Yang Kai frowned, remembering that he had spent 12,000 high-rank Saint crystals to buy a star shuttle of the same grade back on Watermoon Star. Although they were of the same grade, the value of this pair of wings was undoubtedly much higher than that of a star shuttle, so it wasn't strange for it to fetch such a price. On top of that, its appearance was also very beautiful, so presumably, many men would be willing to pay a high price to buy it for the woman they liked. Do you want to buy it for 30,000? Yang Kai looked at Yang 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 and asked. Yang 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 nodded her head like a chicken pecking at rice. I'll sell it to you. Yang Kai tossed the pair of wings to her casually. Yang 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 caught it stupidly for a moment before saying shyly, I don't have that many Saint crystals. She blushed. I know, I didn't ask you to pay up immediately, just owe me. Yen, I'll ask you to refine me some more, so you can deduct your own payment from these 30,000 high-rank Saint crystals. When you finish deducting them, you'll be free. Until then, you'll be my dedicated artifact refiner. A payment of 30,000 high-rank Saint crystals? Yang 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 was taken aback. Do you know how much I should charge you for refining this time? How much? I was going to charge you 1,000 high-rank Saint crystals. That's my monthly payment. 30,000? Doesn't that mean I'll have to spend 30 months without sleep? That's 2.5 years. Yang 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 Yang's face went pale as she couldn't help feeling like she had just boarded a pirate ship. 2.5 years isn't long, you'll pay me back eventually. What if you can't pay me back? Yang 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 was on the verge of tears. She had never had so many Saint crystals before and couldn't even imagine what 30,000 high-rank Saint crystals was like. Then you should be prepared to devote yourself to me. Yang Kai grinned wickedly as he swept his eyes over her proud figure and nodded. Not bad, I'm quite interested in your type. Yang Yang Yang's face went even paler as she stared at the wing artifact in her hand, wanting to smash it into Yang Kai's evil face, but she couldn't bring herself to do so. After thinking about it for a while, she suddenly said seriously, let me ask you something first. Do you have so many materials for me to refine? Since you want to use my payment to pay off your debt, you should continue to provide me with materials. If you don't ask me to refine artifacts for you for a few years, when will I ever be free again? This little girl isn't stupid. Yang Kai originally wanted to establish his identity as the debtor, but Yang Yang Yang, who looked foolish, suddenly became shrewd. You don't have to worry about the materials, Yen, take these and refine them, Yang Kai said, taking out a large pile of materials and placing them in front of Yang Yang. Chapter 1107. When Yang Kai was with Gui Che and the others, they had killed a lot of 7th Order and 8th Order monster beast, so naturally, they had obtained a lot of materials. Last time, he hadn't collected all of the useless materials, but now he had cleared them all. If Yang Inflammation's performance was satisfactory, Yang Kai decided to let her help him refine an origin-grade artifact. Looking at the monster beast's body on the ground, Yang Inflammation hesitated for a long time before finally compromising. Wasn't it just 30,000 high-rank Saint crystals? She felt that she would earn enough one day. Putting all the materials into her space ring, Yang Inflammation once again wrote out a list and handed it to Yang Kai. Go and buy these ores, I need to rest for a few days before I can start refining. Yang Kai took the list and didn't even ask what kind of ores she needed, simply nodding and preparing to leave. Yang Inflammation asked cautiously from behind, can I recover in your stone room? The world energy here is more abundant. Of course. Leaving Dragon Cave Mountain, Yang Kai flew directly towards Heavenly Fate City. According to the list given by Yang Inflammation, it only took half a day to purchase all the ores on it. Yang Inflammation seemed to know what kind of ores were available in Heavenly Fate City, so everything on the list could be found here, so there was no need to worry about supply. While Yang Kai was checking the quantity and quality of the ores he had purchased with the shop assistant, a fat old man with a smile walked over and looked at Yang Kai with great interest before asking, little brother, you're buying so many ores, are you planning to use them for artifact refining? Yang Kai frowned at him and the shop assistant immediately introduced, honored guest, this is our shop's shopkeeper, Qian Tong. Yang Kai nodded lightly but didn't speak. This fat old man looked harmless to humans and animals, but his strength wasn't low. He should be an origin returning realm master as his aura was extremely restrained. Yang Kai didn't know what this old man had seen through him, but at this time it was best not to reveal too much. Qian Tong didn't mind, still smiling as he said, little brother can rest assured, our firm's price is fair and honest, we will never engage in any kind of black-hearted business. Yen, we also purchase artifacts. If little brother has an artifact to sell, we can sit down and discuss. The price will definitely satisfy you. How can you be sure I have artifacts to sell? Yang Kai looked at him again, puzzled. Qian Tong laughed. Old master, you are a guest. This is what this old master says to every guest. I really do have some artifacts to sell. Yang Kai smiled. Yang Kai had come to Heavenly Fate City this time to purchase the ores on Yang Inflammation's list and to sell the artifacts refined by that woman. In any case, he had no use for them. Whether it was the mace, dagger, or whip, none of them were suitable for him. Keeping them in his space ring would only be a waste of heaven's treasures, so he might as well trade them for some saint crystals. Buying those ores had cost him a lot of saint crystals. He had originally wanted to ask Wu Yi for help in selling those artifacts. After all, he wasn't familiar with the market here, but Wu Yi's situation wasn't good either. Her strength wasn't high and her status wasn't high, so asking her for help might cause some unnecessary trouble. Now that this fat old man had taken the initiative to come to him, Yang Kai was just about to accept. The other party wasn't weak, but Yang Kai wasn't afraid. If worse came to worst, he could just tear space and escape. With a life-saving method, he naturally had the confidence to negotiate. Oh, it seems this old man's vision isn't bad. Haha, this way, little brother. Qian Tong gestured before leading Yang Kai to the side. A short time later, the pair arrived at a secret room. It was obvious that this secret room was specifically used for transactions. Many people didn't like to have their faces seen when they were selling things, and they even more so didn't want unrelated people to see what they were selling. As such, there were often situations where people wearing masks would come to these shops to make transactions. The existence of this secret room was a good way to avoid these problems. Once the door to the secret room was closed, only Yang Kai and Qian Tong remained in the room. Even their divine senses seemed to be isolated from the outside world, making it impossible to probe. Yang Kai glanced around, his expression remaining calm and composed. A light flashed across Qian Tong's smiling eyes as he secretly felt shocked, wondering if this young man was simply being thick-skinned or if he was truly unafraid. He was a businessman, so although he was surprised, he didn't say anything and instead asked, "What kind of artifacts does little brother wish to sell? What grade are they?" Yang Kai took out the 3 artifacts refined by Yang Yang. Qian Tong glanced at them before picking up the 3 artifacts and inspecting them one by one. A moment later, he gently nodded. Although this old man isn't proficient in artifact refining, I can still see that these 3 artifacts are of the highest grade and should have been refined by the same artifact refiner. What price does little brother want? Qian Tong only talked about business and didn't inquire about other miscellaneous information, which made Yang Kai very satisfied. I don't understand the price. How do you usually buy things? Yang Kai asked back. Qian Tong was stunned. He didn't expect that Yang Kai would actually hand over the initiative to him. Which one of the people who came to sell things didn't tightly grasp the initiative? Afraid that they would make a loss, not only would they praise their own things without any principles, they would also think of ways to raise the price. Even after the transaction was successful, many people would secretly regret whether or not they had made a loss. This young man was quite free and easy, as if he didn't care at all whether or not he suffered a loss. Smiling, Qian Tong said, "The starting price of a Saint King grade artifact is generally 5,000 high-rank Saint crystals. There is no bottom line. Of these 3 artifacts, 2 are Saint King grade low rank and 1 is Saint King grade mid-rank, both of which have been refined quite well. This old man offers 6,000 high-rank Saint crystals for the 2 low-rank artifacts. What about 8,000 high-rank Saint crystals for the Saint King grade mid-rank artifact? A total of 20,000? Yang Kai frowned. This price seemed to be a bit lower than what he had expected. However, thinking about it for a moment, Qian Tong understood that the value of Saint crystals on Shadowed Star was much higher than elsewhere. In other words, this Qian Tong's price was fair, and he was a businessman, so naturally he wanted to make a profit. If little brother thinks the price is too low, we can discuss it again. Business is a matter of setting the price on the ground and returning the money when the price falls. Qian Tong smiled slightly. Give me the ores outside and we'll do business. Yang Kai stretched out his hand and pointed outside. Qian Tong laughed in surprise. Little brother is quite astute. The total price of the ores you bought is not low, more than 3,000 high-rank Saint crystals. Ien, let's make friends. Ien, if you have any more artifacts to sell in the future, please choose our firm first. Deal. Yang Kai nodded. The firm's speed was very fast. Yang Kai left the 3 artifacts behind and soon obtained 20,000 high-rank Saint crystals and all the ores he needed before leaving Heavenly Fate City. After he left, Qian Tong looked at his back with a smile and muttered, "Interesting. Elder Qian, this business deal was a loss. Giving him more than 3,000 high-rank Saint crystals worth of ores, we didn't make much profit." The shop assistant who had just received Yang Kai came over and complained. Qian Tong smiled and said, "Ien, I think we made a lot of money." The shop assistant looked at him blankly as he counted with his fingers, but still felt something was wrong. "What do you know? That little brat should have a very powerful artifact refining master behind him. Last time, he also bought some ores, but it wasn't here. It just so happened that I was in that shop at that time, so I have some impression of him. He can be considered quite astute. He actually knew to change to another shop to buy ores. But most of the shops in Heavenly Fortune City belong to my Shadow Moon Hall. It's only been a month, but now he's come back to buy ores and 3 Saint King grade artifacts. What do you think this means?" Qian Tong was in a good mood and said a few words to the shop assistant, but seeing the confused look on his face, he couldn't help laughing. "He'll come back again. If he does, notify me immediately. If he can't contact me, you can trade with him. Even if you lose some money, it doesn't matter. The most important thing is to satisfy him," Qian Tong said. "Disciple understands," the shop assistant quickly responded. The shop assistant nodded quickly. Although he didn't know what Qian Tong meant, it was absolutely right to listen to his instructions. Qian Tong immediately left the shop and rushed to a palace in Heavenly Fate City, where he found another old man and handed him the 3 artifacts. The old man gently stroked the artifacts with his eyes closed, seemingly sensing something. A moment later, his expression changed as a look of surprise appeared on his face. After half an hour, the old man put down the 3 artifacts and opened his eyes. "Grandmaster Ji Lin, what did you see?" Qian Tong asked immediately. "The one who refined these 3 artifacts is an origin-grade artifact refiner." The old man named Ji Lin took a deep breath. "Origin-grade?" Qian Tong's eyes immediately bulged. Although he had inferred from various signs that there was a powerful artifact refiner behind Yang Kai, he hadn't expected it to be an origin-grade artifact refiner. Ien, an origin-grade artifact. In terms of ability, it's no worse than this old master's. The materials used are basically from the body of an 8th-order monster beast. Who refined them? Is there such a person near Heavenly Fate City? Ji Lin asked curiously. "I don't know who refined them, but a young man came to sell them today." Qian Tong shook his head. "Have you tracked his whereabouts?" Ji Lin asked again. "I didn't dare act rashly. I didn't want to cause a misunderstanding with the person behind him. If that happened, the gains would not be worth the losses." Ji Lin nodded. "Ien, that's true. Such a person can only be won over, not offended. Being able to kill an 8th-order monster beast shows that this person's strength is not low. He can both fight and artifact refining, much stronger than this old master. You should pay more attention to this young man. As long as you show enough sincerity, it shouldn't be difficult to figure out the identity of the person behind him. That's what I was thinking, and he should be coming back soon. Today, he bought a lot of Saint King grade ores. He should be using them to refine artifacts. Good job. I'm old and probably won't live much longer. If you can get that person to take over my position, when the time comes, if your artifacts break, someone will be able to repair them." Ji Lin smiled bitterly. Artifact refiners did not focus on cultivation or fighting, so their vitality was not strong and their lifespan was generally much shorter than a cultivator of the same rank. Chapter 1108. Looking at young Inflammation lying in his stone room, sleeping soundly without a care for her image, Yang Kai could only shake his head helplessly. A month of artifact refining seemed to have made her extremely tired. Lying there, her breathing was heavy, Her whole body spread out like the Chinese character, not caring whether or not she would seduce Yang Kai. Her towering twin peaks and exquisite figure were extremely eye-catching. When Yang Kai came back, the noise he made did not wake her up. Turning around and walking out of the cave, Yang Kai caught a few game on the mountain and set up a fire outside the cave to roast them. Yang Inflammation's physical and mental energy consumption was very serious, so eating something would be very helpful to her recovery. Halfway through the roasting, Yang Inflammation ran out and smiled, hugging her arms as she squatted down beside Yang Kai, staring straight at the roasted golden rabbit, waiting to eat. "Have you rested well?" Yang Kai glanced over at her. "Not bad, I still need to rest for a few more days." Yang Inflammation replied casually before calling out, "Hurry up and turn it over, it's already roasted." "Aya, you're so stupid, let me do it." Calling out like this, she snatched the rabbit from Yang Kai's hand without any explanation. Yang Kai didn't care and simply sat down, staring at her suspiciously as he asked, "You're an origin-grade artifact refiner, why are you so miserable?" This was something Yang Kai couldn't understand. Yang Yang had skills, and as long as she showed them, she would be able to live a superior life. Any great force on Shadowed Star would accept her with the most generous treatment and would even try to snatch her away. Yang Inflammation pursed her lips. "What do you know? You think I should join one of those great forces, right?" Yang Kai nodded. "I don't want to join them," Yang Inflammation snorted. "They're not good people, I won't refine artifacts for them." As soon as she said that, Yang Kai understood. Without the support of a great force, a woman like Yang Yang wouldn't be able to display her true ability. This was because she couldn't find high-grade materials to refine artifacts. Even if she entered a place like the Artifact Refining Pavilion, her ability would be questioned. She would only be allowed to refine low-grade artifacts. Even if she claimed to be an origin-grade artifact refiner, no one dared to use origin-grade materials to verify her abilities. Under this vicious cycle, who would be miserable if not her? Even Yang Kai didn't believe her easily. He deliberately gave her some materials that he didn't need. "Do you have a grudge against them?" Yang Kai asked. "I just don't like him, but I don't hate him. I've heard that no matter which faction you're in, there will always be a conflict of power and interests. I just want to refine in peace and don't want to be involved in those troublesome matters." This wasn't wrong. The more powerful an artifact refiner was, the more they would be valued and won over. Moreover, each great force wasn't monolithic. Even a small family like the Haiku family was constantly divided, not to mention a behemoth like Shadow Moon Hall. Once Yang Inflammation got involved, she would probably be annoyed to death. The aroma of roasted meat filled the air and Yang Inflammation looked at the roasted meat in her hand with satisfaction, tearing off a rabbit leg and handing it to Yang Kai. Yang Kai slowly shook his head and Yang Inflammation unceremoniously stuffed it into her mouth. "I sold the artifacts you refined," Yang Kai said casually. "Oh, they're yours, you can do whatever you want with them. I sold them for a total of 20,000 high-rank Saint crystals. The price is fair, I didn't suffer a loss." Yang Inflammation nodded casually. "How many Saint crystals do you have?" Yang Kai asked again. "Why?" Yang Inflammation suddenly became vigilant and covered her space ring, a look of fear on her face that Yang Kai would try to steal her Saint crystals. Thinking about it for a moment, she felt it was impossible and said hesitantly, 2,000. Low-rank Saint crystals. So poor. Yang Kai was speechless, shaking his head and sighing before taking out some high-rank Saint crystals and a few bottles of restorative pills from his space ring and handing them over. "Artifact refining consumes a lot of energy, these are for you." Yang Yang wiped her hands and didn't act polite with Yang Kai, accepting the Saint crystals and stuffing them into her space ring before opening the bottle and taking a sniff. Her expression couldn't help changing. Saint King grade pills? She hadn't expected Yang Kai to be so generous. A bottle of Saint King grade pills was not cheap. These few bottles were equivalent to half of the artifacts she refined. "You seem to be very rich." Yang Inflammation looked at Yang Kai strangely. Taking out countless 7th Order and 8th Order monster beast materials, a few bottles of Saint King grade pills, a Saint King grade high-rank star shuttle, and an origin grade artifact, the 7-colored flag. Young Inflammation found it hard to imagine that a third-order saint cultivator could have so many good things. Compared to him, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. Where did he get all these things from? He didn't look like someone with any background at all. Don't be stingy with pills. When you run out you can ask me for more. I have a lot, Young Kai ordered. He had some understanding of Young Inflammation's character. She was the kind of person who valued wealth as much as her life. Young Kai was really worried that this woman wouldn't use pills to restore her strength. You're such a good person, Young Inflammation was moved to death. Saying so, she picked up a piece of barbecue and continued to gnaw on it, her mouth covered in oil. A few days later, Young Inflammation fully recovered and began artifact refining again. This time, Young Kai let her work directly in his stone room. He had arranged the 7 colored spirit gathering flags in his stone room, which would be of great help to her recovery. This way, she would be able to save time in artifact refining and improve her efficiency. The burning hot Yang attribute energy was constantly bursting out, and this kind of energy fluctuation made Kai Yang feel very comfortable. While Yang Inflammation was refining, Young Kai didn't stay idle either. He went to Young Inflammation's residence and entered retreat to accumulate his Saint Chi. It had been at least 4 or 5 years since he broke through to the third-order saint realm. Although Young Kai had been sealed inside the blood-colored crystal for most of these years and was unable to perceive the passage of time, with the birth of the 100 drops of demon god golden blood, Young Kai clearly felt that his strength had improved again. While he was unaware, his cultivation had risen to a very high level. Young Kai faintly felt that the Saint King realm was within reach. He didn't lack comprehension of the heavenly way and martial Tao, all he lacked was the accumulation of Saint Chi. As long as he accumulated enough Saint Chi, he could naturally break through. While accumulating Saint Chi, Young Kai was also studying the uses of his golden blood. The last time he used a drop of golden blood to transform it into a golden spear and resolve the crisis Wu Yi and the others faced, Young Kai realized just how powerful his golden blood was. Young Kai was curious to know what other uses his golden blood could serve besides fighting. Recalling the scene at that time, Young Kai's expression changed as a novel idea suddenly came to his mind. Squeezing out a drop of golden blood, Young Kai flicked his finger. The drop of golden blood flew into the void and disappeared in the blink of an eye, reappearing 1,000 kilometers away. Just like that time, Young Kai was inside the cave on Dragon Cave Mountain, but his eyes could clearly see the scene 1,000 kilometers away. The drop of golden blood seemed to have an inseparable connection with him, allowing his consciousness to freely switch between his physical body and the golden blood. Through the golden blood, Young Kai could easily see the scene in the distance. Immediately, Young Kai entered an ethereal state and observed his surroundings with his golden blood. He saw cities passing by below and mountains quickly being left behind. The movement speed of the golden blood was extremely fast, several times faster than a star shuttle. On top of that, Young Kai's comprehension of the Tao of space allowed the golden blood to break through the shackles of space, allowing it to travel at a speed even faster than Young Kai's divine sense. A huge amount of vitality spread out from the golden blood without any concealment, and wherever it passed, many masters on Shadowed Star were alarmed. The eyes of countless masters followed the golden blood as it passed, their faces filled with shock. None of them knew who was exuding such a violent life aura, nor did they know how strong this person was. The speed at which this golden blood spread out was faster than their divine senses, but after a brief moment, it disappeared without a trace, making it impossible for them to investigate. The leaders of many great forces gathered together to discuss whether there was a possibility of an enemy coming to find them. There were also some people who did not believe in superstition and chased after the flash of golden light, wanting to get a closer look. Young Kai had no idea that his inadvertent actions had caused the entire Shadowed Star to panic as he immersed himself in the wonders of the golden blood, unable to extricate himself for a long time. In just 3 short days, the drop of golden blood flew around Shadowed Star once before returning in the opposite direction. The vitality inside the golden blood had not weakened much, as if this strange journey had not put any pressure on it at all. Young Kai was secretly moved. His consciousness had followed the golden blood around Shadowed Star, so he was well aware of the vastness of this cultivation star. If he had used a star shuttle to fly around it, it would have taken him at least 4 months to complete a round trip. However, the golden blood had only taken 3 short days, demonstrating just how terrifying its speed was. What was its limit? What was the furthest distance he could communicate with it? Yang Kai felt that it was necessary to figure this out, so with a thought, the golden blood that had just returned flew straight up, out of the clouds, and into the star field, heading towards the vast territory of the star field. Yang Kai's consciousness was immersed in the drop of golden blood as he saw one lifeless star after another, a vast asteroid sea, and the black rock beasts that roamed this asteroid sea. This was a quite strange experience, allowing one's consciousness to wander around the star field. Perhaps even an Origin King Realm Master would not be able to accomplish such a feat. Golden blood was truly amazing. After entering this ethereal state, Yang Kai's body seemed to absorb world energy at a much faster rate, accumulating his Saint Chi at an even more violent rate than before. The effects of his cultivation were surprisingly good. Yang Kai did not relax his vigilance of his surroundings. Right now, there were only him and Yang Inflammation on Dragon Cave Mountain, and Yang Inflammation was concentrating on artifact refining, so Yang Kai naturally could not lower his guard. Otherwise, if someone tried to harm him, he would not be able to defend himself. Fortunately, his consciousness could freely switch between his physical body and the golden blood, as if his soul had 2 bodies. Yang Kai would pay attention to the movements of the golden blood from time to time in a leisurely manner. As time passed, Yang Kai gradually lost interest. Although he had been flying around the star field for a long time, the vitality contained in the golden blood seemed to have only weakened a little. Yang Kai estimated that it would last for at least a few years before disappearing. Chapter 1109. Yang Yang spent a relatively long time refining this artifact. This time, nearly 2 months in total. However, when she came out of seclusion, she had brought out 7 Saint King grade artifact. High, medium, and low grade artifacts. Perhaps it was because of the pills and Saint crystals Yang Kai had given her that helped her recover, but she wasn't very tired this time. After handing over these artifacts to Yang Kai, she was even in the mood to calculate how many Saint crystals she still owed Yang Kai. She had great artifact refining ability, wasn't scheming, had a good temper, was beautiful, and had a great figure. Most importantly, the remuneration she charged was very cheap. Yang Kai felt like he had picked up a treasure and was even more determined to keep Yang Yang as his personal artifact refiner. Casually giving her a few bottles of pills and some high-rank Saint crystals, Yang Yang smiled happily, storing the pills and Saint crystals into her space ring as she asked, "What do you want me to refine next? Give me the materials first, I'll see what kind of ores I can use." Yang Kai took out the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion's carapace, tail, and large pincers and tossed them in front of Yang Yang. The little girl's eyes immediately widened. Her beautiful eyes bloomed with a terrifying light. She squatted down and picked up these things one by one. Her small hands stroked them as she muttered to herself. No one knew what she was saying, but she seemed to be a little absent-minded. After a long time, she looked up at Yang Kai and asked, "Are you willing to let me refine these things?" Yang Kai nodded. "You have proven your ability, and I believe you are indeed an origin-grade artifact refiner, so naturally I'll hand these things over to you. Aren't you afraid I'll run away with these things?" Yang still couldn't believe it. These are materials from a 9th-order monster beast. They can be used to refine origin-grade artifact. Why don't you try and see if I can catch you and bring you back? Yang Kai grinned. Yang spat disdainfully. She didn't like Yang Kai's unwarranted confidence, as if everything was under his control. "Don't worry, I'm not a person who goes back on his word. I'll use these things to their fullest potential, but the ores I'll be purchasing this time will be different from the ones before, so you'll have to be prepared to bleed," Yang said solemnly. "It doesn't matter, make a list." Yang Kai nodded before adding, "By the way, I have a request. Just tell me what you want. Help me refine that shell into a defensive artifact. I'll use it for myself. You can do whatever you want with the rest. If you have its monster core, give it to me as well, I'll need it for artifact refining." As soon as Yang's voice fell, A fist-sized monster core containing both earth and wind attributes was tossed over to her. She caught it with satisfaction and began writing down a list. A moment later, she handed it to young Kai and said eagerly, "Go and come back quickly, I'll start refining after a few days of recovery. It's really good to be by your side, there are so many good materials waiting for me to process." She seemed a little impatient. In Heavenly Fate City, inside the firm, Chen Tong sat in a room on the third floor, sipping a cup of tea as he stared in the direction young Kai had left 2 months ago, a faint trace of anxiety and helplessness on his face. Although he had concluded that young Kai would come here again, he had not expected that he would actually wait for 2 months. Until today, the young man had not appeared again, which made Chen Tong very depressed. At that time, he was worried about leaving a bad impression on the master behind the young man, so he did not send anyone to follow him, nor did he dare to inquire casually. He only wanted to gradually understand and use the young man to slowly draw the master out of the water. Now it seemed that this was not the case. At the very least, he should have told the young man that he wanted to recruit the master behind the young man. As long as the young man was smart enough, he would definitely pass on the message. At that time, if the master was willing, he would naturally come to Shadow Moon Hall. If not, it would not be too late for him to invite him. Such an artifact refining Grandmaster, the earlier he could be recruited, the better it would be for the Shadow Moon Hall. If he was too late, he might be discovered by other forces. At that time, there would definitely be a situation of snatching. Once the situation developed to that extent, it would not be a matter of 1 or 2 people dying. Thinking about this, Chen Tong's mood became more and more irritable. He did not notice that the teacup in his hand had been crushed until the scalding hot tea flowed over the back of his hand. Looking at the messy table, Chen Tong could not help but laugh. He wasn't young anymore, and his cultivation base wasn't low either. It seemed that it had been many years since something had upset him. Even when he was in a life-or-death battle with experts of the same level, he hadn't felt as powerless as he did now. Picking up the broken pieces of the teacup and wiping the spilled tea, Chen Tong gently took a breath and calmed his irritable mood. Suddenly, there was a hurried knock on the door. Chen Tong said unhappily, "What's the matter?" "Elder Chen, the young man who came to sell the secret treasure 2 months ago is here again." Outside the door, the shop assistant who had received young Kai last time respectfully replied. After waiting for a while, there was no response. Just as he was feeling suspicious, he heard Elder Chen Tong's excited voice from inside, "Quickly invite him in." As soon as his voice fell, he said, "No, no, no, this old man will personally welcome him." With a series of crashing sounds, it seemed that the tables, chairs, stools, and teapots on the table had all fallen to the ground and broken. The shop assistant's face darkened. He did not know who this young man was and why Elder Chen Tong treated him so seriously. Even the furnishings in the room were knocked over. The door was opened, and Chen Tong, with a flushed face, quickly walked downstairs. The shop assistant looked into the room and found that, as he had guessed, the furniture inside had been completely destroyed and was in a complete mess. On the first floor, young Kai was a little impatient from waiting. The last time he came, the shop assistant had received him attentively and served him meticulously. This time, he could barely be considered a regular customer and had brought the secret treasure to sell according to the previous agreement, but he did not expect that the shop assistant would ask him to wait for a while before disappearing. After waiting for a while, the chubby old man named Chen Tong hurried over and laughed heartily. "Oh, young man, this old man has waited for 2 months and finally you are here. Come, 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 please." Saying so, he affectionately grabbed young Kai's arm and led him to the secret room where they had last traded. In the trading company, a group of cultivators who were trading were stunned. They stared blankly at young Kai's back and were speechless for a long time. Many of them knew Chen Tong and knew that he was an elder-level figure in Shadow Moon Hall, but seeing such a master treat young Kai so cordially, everyone couldn't help feeling surprised. After the two disappeared, everyone began whispering to each other and speculating about young Kai's identity. What kind of background does that guy have? Why did Elder Chen Tong personally greet him and treat him so warmly? What the hell? Even if the patriarchs of the nearby families came here, they wouldn't be worthy of Elder Chen Tong acting so cordially, right? I don't know, I've never seen that guy before, and looking at his clothes, he doesn't look like a master. His cultivation isn't high either, only third-order saint. Strange, the last time the patriarch of the Kurui family came to discuss business, Elder Chen Tong didn't appear. Who knows what's going on? Inside the private room, Chen Tong warmly arranged for Yang Kai to sit down before having someone serve him some fragrant tea and a fruit platter. Pointing to the golden fruits on the platter, Chen Tong smiled and said, "These fruits are a specialty of a family subordinate to my Shadow Moon Hall. On all of Shadowed Star, only the soil there is suitable for this kind of fruit tree to grow. These fruits only mature once every 10 years, and each harvest is less than 500. Although they can't increase one's cultivation rapidly, they taste quite good and can also help to refresh one's vitality and supplement one's Saint Chi. They are most suitable for someone like you who is about to break through. If you don't mind, you might as well try them." At a glance, Chen Tong could see that Yang Kai was on the verge of breaking through to the Saint King realm from the third-order saint realm, so it wouldn't be long before he broke through to the Saint King realm. Yang Kai glanced over at Chen Tong intentionally or unintentionally but didn't show any trace of politeness, nor did he show any signs of vigilance, simply picking up one of the fruits and eating it, its fragrance lingering in his mouth as he nodded and said, "It tastes quite good. If Elder Chen doesn't mind, I would like to take these back." These fruits could quickly restore one's Saint Chi, so they were perfect for Yang Yang to use in artifact refining. Chen Tong's eyes flashed and he laughed heartily. I don't mind. If little brat likes them, I'll have my people prepare more, unfortunately there aren't many left." He didn't care that Yang Kai was so thick-skinned as to take these spirit fruits back because he caught a glimpse of something that excited him. Why would Yang Kai want to take these fruits back? They were clearly meant to be a gift to the master behind him. This made Chen Tong even more certain of his previous guess that there was a powerful artifact refiner behind this young man. Elder Chen said just now that you've been waiting for me for many days. Was this what you were waiting for? Yang Kai said as he took out the 7 freshly refined artifacts from his space ring. Chen Tong's eyes widened as each time Yang Kai took out an artifact, his breathing becoming heavier. When all 7 artifacts were taken out, Chen Tong's expression became somewhat ferocious and excited. He was certain that Yang Kai had come to purchase ores 2 months ago in order to refine these artifacts, and in just 2 months, he had refined 7 Saint King grade artifacts. It was obvious that the master behind him was worthy of his reputation. Even if Grandmaster Ji Lin were to refine these artifacts, it would be impossible for him to refine so many high-quality artifacts in such a short time. Taking a deep breath, Chen Tong's expression returned to normal as he smiled and said, "Waiting for these artifacts is only one aspect of the matter. In fact, this old master has also been waiting for you." "Ian, how should I address you, little brat?" "Yang Kai. This old master is Chen Tong, presumably you know who he is. If you don't mind, how about this old master address you as nephew?" Yang Kai nodded indifferently. With Chen Tong's seniority and age, calling him nephew was not an insult to him. Chen Tong smiled from ear to ear. "Nephew Yang is young and promising. At such a young age, you have already reached the Saint King realm. The younger generation will surpass us in time." As he spoke, he secretly observed Yang Kai's reaction. Chapter 11:10. Young people like to be flattered and praised. Chen Tong thought that with his status and cultivation, Yang Kai should be overjoyed if he praised Yang Kai generously. Who would have thought that Kai Yang's face would remain indifferent, as if these praises were his to receive? He didn't show any signs of modesty, instead he just sat there, motionless. Chen Tong coughed lightly. His expression didn't change as he continued to ask, "May I ask where does nephew Yang work?" Yang Kai smiled. When he came in, Chen Tong treated him so warmly. Yang Kai could faintly guess what he was thinking. Now that he heard his question, he was even more certain of his guess. Looking at Chen Tong, Yang Kai said, "Elder Chen, if you have something to say, just say it." Chen Tong's expression turned solemn as he said warmly, "Nephew, please don't blame me. This old man has no ill intentions. It's just that when a young talent like you appears in front of this old man can't help but want to recruit you. Ian, if you are willing, This old man would like to invite you to my Shadow Moon Hall. I can guarantee that you will be provided with the most abundant cultivation resources and the best cultivation environment. With Nephew Yang's aptitude, you will definitely have a bright future in the sec. He found that Yang Kai didn't seem to be a person who beat around the bush. Instead, he was quite straightforward. He didn't probe any further and immediately stated his conditions. Qian Tong was old and experienced, so he naturally knew that if he tried to recruit the artifact refiner behind Yang Kai as soon as he opened his mouth, it would be impossible. An artifact refiner of that level would be proud and arrogant and definitely not someone who could be persuaded with just a few words, so Qian Tong had set his sights on Yang Kai instead. In his opinion, as long as Yang Kai was willing to enter the Shadow Moon Hall, then whether the weapon refiner behind him would be recruited or not, he would definitely form a relationship with the Shadow Moon Hall. When they were familiar with each other in the future, it would be natural for him to recruit Yang Kai. It had to be said that Qian Tong had a good plan. After he finished speaking, he quietly observed Yang Kai's reaction. To his disappointment, Yang Kai was still indifferent. Sighing to himself, Yang Kai was truly worthy of being the disciple of an origin-grade artifact refiner. Although he didn't know if Yang Kai was that origin-grade artifact refiner's disciple, after years of being influenced by him, it seemed this young man's vision was quite high. He didn't seem to be moved by Yang Kai's empty promise at all. By the way, there is a piece of God's stone in the Shadow Moon Hall's main hall. It has endless uses. Anyone who touches it will be guided into a strange world. In that world, one's mind can be purified and sublimated. It is very beneficial for breaking through the shackles of martial arts. Many disciples in my hall will request to go to the God's Stone to meditate when they encounter bottlenecks in their cultivation. However, only those who have made great contributions to the sect can enjoy such treatment. If Nephew Yang is willing to join my Shadow Moon Hall, this old man will guarantee you that you can go to the God's Stone and comprehend it. It won't be long before Nephew Yang breaks through to the Saint King realm. After Qian Tong finished speaking, he looked at Yang Kai with a burning gaze. He believed that Yang Kai would absolutely not refuse such an offer, because his cultivation was on the verge of a breakthrough at this moment. With such a good opportunity in front of him, no matter who it was, they would grasp it tightly. But soon, the look in Qian Tong's eyes changed because he found that Yang Kai still didn't show any signs of being moved. He couldn't help but be shocked, wondering if this little brat didn't know how precious the God Stone was. Just as he was about to carefully explain the uses of the God Stone, Yang Kai waved his hand and said impatiently, "Elder Qian, this junior appreciates your kindness, but I'm used to being free and lazy. I don't intend to join any great force, so this junior boldly refuses Elder Qian's offer. Let's talk business, there's no need to talk about anything else." Qian Tong's face twitched for a moment before he let out a hollow laugh. Good. This old man is old and has a lot to say. Nephew Yang, please don't mind. Although his recruitment this time was unsuccessful, Qian Tong was a patient person and naturally wasn't too disheartened. He felt that as long as he showed enough sincerity, he would succeed one day. The two sat down and immediately began discussing business. 7 Saint King grade artifacts for a total of 59,000 high-rank Saint crystals. Qian Tong made a straightforward offer and Yang Kai accepted without hesitation. A short while later, a deal was struck. I also want to buy some ores. Yang Kai took out a list from his space ring. Qian Tong's eyes lit up as the last bit of disappointment in his heart was swept away. Calling out loudly, the shop assistant who had been standing guard outside the door immediately came in and asked respectfully, "What instructions does Elder Qian have for me?" "Nephew Yang has a list here. Help him select the ores he needs and take out 59,000 high-rank Saint crystals from the storehouse." Yang Kai nodded. "Yes." The shop assistant took the list. Yang Kai looked at him and said, "Deduct the cost of the ores from those Saint crystals. You can decide how much you need and report it to me later. Give me the best price, understood?" Qian Tong added with a dignified expression. Sometimes, when showing goodwill to others, one needed to shout it out loud for others to hear. Understood, the shop assistant nodded and walked out immediately. After he left, Qian Tong looked at Yang Kai with a smile. Nephew Yang is now a regular customer of ours. Are you satisfied? Satisfied. Yang Kai also smiled and nodded. Regardless of what Chen Tong was scheming in his heart, Yang Kai was naturally satisfied that he had not taken advantage of him. Good, Elder Chen is busy, I'll wait here myself. Chen Tong smiled and didn't insist, saying kindly, good, but Nephew Yang must remember that if you have any artifacts to sell next time, you must choose our shop first. I'll remember. Chen Tong nodded and left. Yang Kai waited in the secret room for about half an hour before being led by the shop assistant to another secret room. This secret room was filled with many rare ores and countless saint crystals. Having already received instructions from Chen Tong, the shop assistant didn't dare act carelessly when dealing with Yang Kai and said respectfully, "These ores are what customer needs. The total price is 17,000 high-rank saint crystals. Because you are a regular customer, we'll give you a 20% discount, making it 13,600 saint crystals. After deducting the saint crystals required for these ores, customers' total is 45,400 saint crystals. Would you like me to count them for you?" No need, Yang Kai shook his head, secretly surprised by the price of these ores. The last time he had come here, the ores he bought had only cost 3,000 saint crystals, but this time it was several times more expensive. No wonder Yang Yun said he was going to bleed out. Yang Kai believed that this shop assistant wouldn't try to trick him. After all, Chen Tong still had ideas about the artifact refiner behind him. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai collected all the ores and saint crystals into his space ring, leaving behind 100 saint crystals. The shop assistant smiled and shot a grateful look towards Yang Kai before respectfully sending him off, neither of them mentioning the 100 saint crystals. On the third floor of the firm, Chen Tong watched Yang Kai's back disappear from his field of vision, his brow furrowed deeply. He didn't know what method he could use to recruit Yang Kai into Shadow Moon Hall. He had tried twice today but had both failed. He didn't know what this young man's preferences were, but if he knew what they were, things would be much easier. Unfortunately, he couldn't send someone to follow him, which was really frustrating. There was a knock on the door again. "Come in." Chen Tong sat back down in his chair. The shop assistant walked in and immediately reported, "Elder, when that young man just left, he left 100 saint crystals for this disciple." "Oh." Chen Tong glanced at him in surprise. "Did you accept it?" "Yen, this disciple didn't refuse. He didn't say it explicitly, but this disciple knows that he deliberately left it for this disciple." "Elder, if you can't accept it, I'll send it back to him now." The shop assistant cautiously observed Chen Tong's expression, fearing that the elder would become angry. Chen Tong waved his hand and said, "No need. Since he's giving it to you, you should accept it generously. This young man likes to be straightforward. If you feign kindness and decline, he might not be happy. Yen, the next time he comes to buy ores, you have to give him more. Then, you have to tell him secretly. Do you understand?" "Understood." "Right, what kind of ores did he buy this time? Was it the same as last time?" The shop assistant immediately shook his head. This time he bought 17,000 high-rank saint crystals worth of ores. "According to your instructions, I gave him a 20% discount, so I accepted him. 17,000 high-rank saint crystals?" Chen Tong's face changed as he seemed to realize something and asked anxiously, "Did he buy origin-grade ores?" "Yes." Chen Tong's expression changed and he suddenly burst into laughter. Good, as expected, as expected." Chen Tong seemed to be very excited and kept pacing back and forth around the room. The shop assistant was confused, not knowing why Elder Chen was so happy. In his impression, other than when he broke through to the second-order origin returning realm, the elder had never been as happy as he was today. A moment later, Chen Tong suddenly took out a piece of pure white jade and poured his divine sense into it before casually tossing it to the shop assistant. "Pass down the order. All the stewards of my Shadow Moon Hall's shops in Heavenly Fate City must remember this person's appearance. If he visits a shop, they must receive him with all their heart. Don't be too obvious about it, but give him preferential treatment if possible. If there is anyone who doesn't have eyes and offends him, I will make them regret being born in this world." Saying so, Chen Tong's aura became cold. The shop assistant trembled as he took the piece of jade and quietly examined it, quickly discovering that Yang Kai's appearance was engraved on it by Qian Tong's divine sense. Holding the piece of jade with both hands, the shop assistant immediately went out to inform all the stewards of Heavenly Fate City, not daring to delay. After the shop assistant left, Qian Tong swept the 7 artifacts placed on the table into his space ring and then rushed to Grandmaster Ji Lin's residence. He was going to tell Grandmaster Ji Lin that things were as he said. There was indeed an origin-grade artifact refiner behind Yang Kai. Although they had some guesses before and knew that the first artifact Yang Kai brought out was refined by an origin-grade artifact refiner, they were not sure whether this artifact refiner really existed. Perhaps Yang Kai had obtained that artifact by accident. Chapter 11:11. But now it was different. Since Yang Kai had bought origin-grade ore, it meant that all his previous speculations had come true. Yang Kai had to discuss this matter with Grandmaster Ji Lin to see if he could make a personal trip. After all, artifact refiners had a lot in common, so perhaps Ji Lin would have a way to invite him. Qian Tong rushed to the palace and told Ji Lin about this matter, causing Ji Lin to also become excited. The two of them discussed whether they should let Ji Lin come forward to talk to Yang Kai next time. At the very least, they should let the artifact refiner behind him know that Ji Lin was interested in communicating with him. Dragon Cave Mountain. When Yang Kai returned, he found that Yang Inflammation was not inside the cave, causing him to be a little surprised. Quickly diving into the cave to investigate, the scene inside caused Yang Kai's face to sink as a cold murderous intent flashed from the depths of his eyes. Yang Inflammation was a simple woman, so it was impossible for her to leave here for no reason, let alone escape with his precious materials. There were some traces of a struggle in the cave, which was also a good indication that Yang Inflammation had encountered some kind of danger. Yang Kai was furious. Without even mentioning the fact that he had just handed over the materials from the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion to Yang Yang, he had also bought a lot of ore for her to refine an origin-grade defensive artifact for him. As for Yang Yang herself, an origin-grade artifact refiner who was diligently refining artifacts for him, Yang Kai wouldn't allow any accidents to happen to her. Who did this? The nearby Haiku family? There weren't many traces of battle left in the cave, so Yang Yang shouldn't have been entangled with the enemy here. Although she was an origin-grade artifact refiner, through his observations over the past few days, Yang Kai found that she didn't have much combat power. If it was really the Haiku family who did this, Yang Kai wouldn't even care about Wu Yi's face and would definitely storm the Haiku family. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai's monstrous anger soon subsided as he found that the situation wasn't as bad as he thought. Yang Inflammation was safe at the moment, but she seemed to be being chased by someone and was currently fleeing across the mountain range. She was currently in a gully a few dozen kilometers away from the cave. After learning the location of Yang Inflammation, Yang Kai immediately left the cave and rushed over, his Saint Chi surging as a fierce look appeared on his face. A moment later, the sound of Yang Inflammation's cries reached Yang Kai's ears, causing his heart to sink. Yang Yang. Yang Kai flew straight over and called out to her halfway through. Hearing Yang Kai's voice, who was still fleeing, was her beautiful eyes. Yang Kai, she quickly, her hands holding her black robes, and quickly rushed over. Around her body, there was a fiery red halo that was extremely hot. This was clearly a very high-grade defensive artifact. From the energy fluctuations flowing from this halo, Yang Kai estimated that even if he used his full strength, he wouldn't necessarily be able to hurt Yang Inflammation. Yang Inflammation's condition was also quite good. Besides looking a bit flustered and somewhat distressed, there were no scars on her body, allowing Yang Kai to relax. Woo woo woo. Yang Kai, save me. Someone is bullying me. Yang Inflammation cried as she quickly ran behind Yang Kai to hide. Don't be afraid. Yang Kai comforted her, his eyes turning cold as he stared forward. Several figures quickly flew over from that direction, one of them shouting angrily, "Cheap slut, you dare hurt me? You're dead." Before he could finish his words, a huge sword beam flew over from the other side. Everywhere the sword beam passed, cracks would appear on the ground, and trees would be crushed into powder. This sword wave was filled with cold murderous intent, obviously not just a simple deterrent, but one that really wanted to take someone's life. Yang Kai coldly snorted and pulled Young Inflammation to the side, avoiding the attack of this sword wave. 5 figures landed and surrounded Yang Kai and Young Inflammation. Young Inflammation's tender body trembled as she tightly clutched onto Yang Kai's clothes, a look of horror filling her face. Even if her artifact refining skills were great, she was still just a little girl in her 20s. She had no combat experience, nor had she ever encountered a dangerous fight, so this time's experience had truly frightened her. Although Yang Kai had already arrived, seeing the fierce looks on the faces of these 5 people, she couldn't help feeling a little frightened. She didn't know if Yang Kai could deal with the situation in front of him. After all, she also knew that Yang Kai's strength wasn't high, only a third-order saint. Yang Kai turned his head to look at these people and couldn't help feeling a little stunned. Because he found that Yang, who was being chased, was completely unscathed, but the 5 people who were chasing her all had wounds all over their bodies, especially the young man standing in front of him who looked about the same age as him. There were more than a dozen bloody holes on his gloomy face. Yang Kai didn't know what kind of attack had inflicted these wounds, but his face was covered in blood, making him look extremely terrifying. The other 4 people were also more or less covered in blood, the most serious of which had his abdomen scorched and was in unbearable pain. His forehead was covered with cold sweat, obviously having been burned by extremely hot flames. What happened? Yang Kai was confused, turning his head to look at Young Inflammation. Young Inflammation's face was still pale, her teeth chattering as she sobbed, "I don't know. I was resting in the cave when they broke in. That guy said he wanted me to accompany him, but I didn't want to, so he came up to pull me, so I summoned my sun-scorching shield and shot out my cold bone nails, injuring him. Then the other 4 people also rushed over, so I threw out the dragon beard rope, 10,000 flame handkerchief, colored glass ring, and profound cloud gold thread before running away. After that, they began to chase me. I kept running, and then you came." Hearing Young Inflammation say this, the faces of the 5 people who were gathered around were filled with embarrassment and anger. Yang Kai frowned and pondered for a while, imagining the situation at that time in his mind. He imagined Young Inflammation panicking, summoning all kinds of high-grade artifacts in the cave, and then beating these 5 people until they were crying for their mothers and fathers. Yang Kai suddenly wanted to laugh. Worthy of an origin-grade artifact refiner. Yang Kai never knew that Young Inflammation actually had so many trump cards. Although her combat effectiveness and courage were somewhat lacking, with her luxurious array of artifacts and equipment, she wasn't someone who could be casually bullied. If she really wanted to kill these 5 people, they would have died long ago. Although he had worried for nothing, Yang Kai was still a little annoyed. Knowing that Young Inflammation had an endless supply of artifacts, these 5 people still pursued her. This was a bit excessive. If they were smarter, they would have already retreated, but they still pursued her. Either they had taken a fancy to Young Inflammation's beauty, or they had taken a fancy to Young Inflammation's artifacts. The latter was more likely. Considering all this, Yang Kai's expression became even colder. The young man with the bloody hole in his face was a little afraid of Yang Kai's sudden appearance, but after realizing that he was just a third-order saint cultivator, he immediately became arrogant and shouted, "Little brat, no matter who you are, no matter what relationship you have with this woman, this matter has nothing to do with you. If you don't want to die, hurry up and scram, otherwise don't blame this young master for killing you." Yang Kai laughed, "This is my territory. You dare act wildly in my territory and even want to touch my people, yet you say it has nothing to do with me. Your territory?" The young man showed a look of sudden realization. "You're from the Haiku family, right? Since that's the case, this matter should be easy." His expression suddenly became extremely relaxed as a look of arrogance appeared on his face as he pointed to himself and declared, "My name is Shu Tianzi." After saying so, he proudly waited for Yang Kai's reaction, as if his name should have some kind of deterrent effect. However, Yang Kai just stared at him indifferently, not responding at all. Shu Tianzi was stunned for a moment before shouting exaggeratedly, Hey, don't tell me you don't know who I am. Should I know who you are?" Yang Kai coldly snorted, "Who do you think you are?" Shu Tianzi looked at his 4 subordinates in amazement before laughing loudly. "The people of the Haiku family are getting worse and worse. There's actually someone who doesn't know who I, Shu Tianzi. Young master, this guy's strength isn't high, and he doesn't seem to be an important character in the haiku family. It's likely he really hasn't heard of your name, one of the men next to him said. This explanation made Shu Tianzi's expression much better. Even in a small force like the haiku family, this guy really couldn't make him take him seriously. The only thing he was worried about was the petite woman wearing a large black robe. This cheap woman had a mess of artifacts on her body, causing him to suffer a lot just now. If he didn't know about this, then it would have been fine, but after learning about it, Shu Tianzi naturally wouldn't give up. Those artifacts were really something to covet. On top of that, this woman didn't seem to know how to fight and only knew how to run away. If that was the case, Yang Kai was quite sure he would be able to obtain both her wealth and her body. This woman was really top grade. Her breasts, her ass, even that large black robe couldn't hide her proud charm. Shu Tianzi could already imagine what this woman would look like after stripping her naked, causing his blood to boil. He had never thought that just by passing by this place and seeing that the world energy aura here was quite good, he would actually obtain such a big harvest. Seeing Shu Tianzi's eyes staring at him, Yang subconsciously grabbed Yang Kai's clothes and hid behind him, whispering, "Yang Kai, they have 4 Saint Kings, we should run." Saint Kings are amazing. The number of Saint Kings who have died at my hands isn't just 1 or 2. Yang Kai patted Yang on the shoulder. You think you can kill Saint Kings? Shu Tianzi seemed to have heard a joke and laughed loudly. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do the people of the haiku family speak without thinking? Shu Wei, go up and teach him a lesson, let him know what a Saint King is. Yes, young master. The cultivator who was named grinned and walked forward step by step, cracking his neck as he walked. Little brat, provoking my family's young master, your end will be very miserable. Provoking me, your end won't be any better. After you die, you can regret it. Yang Kai looked at him faintly, and as soon as his voice fell, a jet black flame suddenly appeared and shot towards the cultivator named Shu Wei. Chapter 11-12. A burst of demonic flames suddenly appeared, carrying with it a monstrous momentum as it shot towards the Saint King realm cultivator named Shu Wei. Shu Wei's expression became fierce as he laughed. Fire attribute cultivator? What this father fears the least is the fire attribute. Saying so, a mist of energy suddenly appeared on the surface of his body and a series of ripples spread out from him. Shu Wei was like a stone thrown into a lake, splashing out tens of thousands of ripples. These ripples intertwined with each other and contained an extremely powerful force that met the demonic flames head-on, intending to extinguish them first before strangling Yang Kai to let this arrogant little brat know just how big the gap between them was. As soon as he saw Shu Wei use his strength, Yang Kai knew that he cultivated a water attribute secret art and understood where Shu Wei's self-confidence came from. Since ancient times, water and fire were incompatible, so Shu Wei's strength clearly restrained Yang Kai. What's more, Shu Wei's cultivation was higher than Yang Kai's, so if he still couldn't win, his several dozen years of cultivation would have been in vain. Shu Tianzi and the remaining Saint Kings clearly knew Shu Wei's background, so they crossed their arms and stood to the side to watch the show, their eyes filled with ridicule and disdain as they stared towards Yang Kai. In their opinion, Yang Kai would die without a doubt. It was absolutely impossible for him to escape from Shu Wei's water attribute secret art. Perhaps they wouldn't even be able to find an intact piece of flesh. Shu Wei sneered, and so did Yang Kai. Both of their eyes were filled with confidence as they stared at each other as if they were looking at a dead man, completely devoid of emotion. Water-like ripples spread over, but the extreme heat in the ball of devilish flames suddenly changed, becoming extremely cold. The spreading ripples were completely frozen in mid-air, as if they had been completely frozen. Shu Wei's sneer stiffened on his face as he stared blankly at the strange scene in front of him, somewhat unable to understand why his strength had been restrained by this ball of flames. Although this ball of flames was pitch black and looked a bit strange, it was still only displayed by a third-order saint cultivator. How much energy did it have to stop his power from spreading? While Shu Wei was absent-minded, a soft sound rang out, and a scene that made Shu Wei's soul fly out of his body appeared. The frozen water ripples were all burning, and the burning flames were spreading towards him at an incomparably ferocious speed. The pitch-black fireball exuded a strange fluctuation of alternating heat and cold, mixed with the terrifying aura of yang and evil that could not coexist, and directly bombarded Xu Wei's body. The Saint Qi he used to protect his body didn't play a protective role at all. On the contrary, it only served to add fuel to the fire, causing it to burn even more fiercely. Xu Wei only had time to scream before his body was engulfed in black flames. Yang Kai leapt into the air, displaying his martial skills and summoning his artifacts one by one in an attempt to extinguish the flames on his body, but it was all to no avail. The burning black flames were like ghosts chasing after his life, sticking to his body as they burned more and more fiercely. Yang Kai opened his mouth in pain but couldn't make a single sound, as if even his voice was being swallowed by the flames. In less than 10 breaths of time, Xu Wei fell from the sky like a burning fireball, smashing into the ground and disintegrating. A charred stench suddenly filled the air, causing everyone who smelled it to feel like vomiting. Xu Tianzi and the remaining 3 Saint King Realm cultivator had never expected Yang Kai to be so ruthless. With just a 3rd Order Saint cultivation, he had killed a 1st Order Saint King cultivator with just a wave of his hand. What kind of flames were those? Xu Wei had been unable to fight back at all. It wasn't until now that everyone realized that what Yang Kai had said just now didn't seem to be boasting. The number of Saint Kings who had died at his hands wasn't limited to just 1 or 2. With such means, it wouldn't be difficult for him to kill Saint Kings. Considering all this, 2 of them felt their hearts beating rapidly as they stared at Yang Kai with eyes filled with horror and dread. Their cultivations were similar to Xu Wei's, perhaps even lower, but Yang Kai could kill Xu Wei in a single blow, so killing them would be as easy as flipping his hand. Between life and death, the 2 of them trembled, unable to advance or retreat for a time, turning their eyes to the strongest of their group for help. This was a balding middle-aged man whose cultivation was higher than Xu Wei and the other 2, but he was still only a 2nd Order Saint King. After seeing the terrifying power of the demonic flames, this man knew that he couldn't stay here any longer. Because he had no way to resist this kind of burning, the black flames seemed capable of incinerating everything in the world, bringing unimaginable despair to anyone who saw them. "What are you all gawking for?" He killed Xu Wei. "Charge. Tear this bastard into 10,000 pieces. I want him to die a horrible death." Xu Tianzi, the one with the lowest cultivation, stomped his feet and cursed. Although Xu Tianzi was the young master of the Xu family, his aptitude was truly unsightly. The Xu family had used countless precious treasures to help him temper his body over the years, but even now, he was only a 3rd Order saint. Without aptitude on the martial Dao, Xu Tianzi didn't try to improve himself and instead spent all his time indulging in debauchery. Relying on the prestige of the Xu family, no one in the vicinity dared to provoke him. What's more, he always had 4 Saint King Realm bodyguards with him, so besides a great force like Shadow Moon Hall, no one dared to have any ideas about him. Today, one of his bodyguards had suddenly died for no apparent reason. Xu Tianzi hadn't seen how powerful Yang Kai was and only knew that his face had been damaged, so he immediately wanted revenge. Hearing him shout like this, the 3 Saint King Realm masters all stared at him with difficulty. At this moment, all of them hoped that their waste young master would shut his stinky mouth. Could this idiot not see that the 3 of them were clay bodhisattvas crossing a river and were powerless to protect themselves? The bald middle-aged man suddenly turned to the other 2 and shouted, "You should know what will happen to you if something happens to the young master." When the 2 Saint Kings heard this, they immediately turned to look at Yang Kai and summoned their defensive artifacts without saying a word before pouncing towards Yang Kai. One of them raised his hand and a silver light filled the surrounding space. This silver light was filled with murderous intent and quickly wrapped around Yang Kai. The other man silently appeared behind Yang Kai and summoned a huge tiger phantom from his body, biting towards Yang Kai's neck. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and grabbed towards Yang Inflammation, who was hiding behind Yang Kai. As long as he caught this woman, he could use her as a bargaining chip to force Yang Kai to compromise. Although this woman was covered in powerful artifacts, she didn't understand how to fight, so it shouldn't be difficult to capture her. The two Saint Kings, one in front and one behind, cooperated closely. Obviously, this was not the first time they had worked together, so they were quite familiar with each other's strength and movements. Yang Kai stood in place, motionless. Just as the silver light was about to reach him, a ring of black flames suddenly appeared around his body, as if he was on fire. Not only did this ring wrap around him, even Yang, who was still holding onto his clothes, was wrapped in it. The silver light bombarded this demonic flame and instantly melted. The cultivator who had rushed in front of Yang Kai paled, realizing that he had underestimated this young man's ability, and hurriedly retreated. "You think you can escape?" Yang Kai stretched out his hand and punched the man's chest. The Saint King grade low-rank defensive artifact armor he was wearing was as fragile as a piece of paper, and Yang Kai's attack directly punched a hole in it. Even the Saint King grade low-rank artifact's chest had caved in. Like an arrow released from a bow, the man flew out quickly, his artifact armor and body completely burned away by the demonic flame, dying before he even hit the ground. The moment Yang Kai's fist hit the man's chest, a scream rang out from behind him. The cultivator who wanted to capture Young Inflammation as a bargaining chip had just placed his hand on Young Inflammation's shoulder when he was burned by Yang Kai's demonic flame. He hurriedly pulled back his hand, but the devil flame spread to his arm at an extremely fast speed. This person was also decisive. He pulled out a long sword and directly cut off his own arm. He would rather cut off his own arm than let the demonic flame burn his body. His two companions had been burned to death like this, so how could he not understand the horror of this demonic flame? After cutting off his own arm, he tried to escape without looking back, but to his despair, another mass of black flames suddenly appeared in front of him and slammed directly into his face. Cold and hot simultaneously, the cultivator instantly realized that his face was no longer there. Using his remaining hand, he scratched desperately, trying to get rid of the flames, but to no avail. His face was scratched to pieces and the flames quickly burned his entire body, causing him to twitch and twitch uncontrollably. It was obvious that he would not survive. Yang Kai turned his head and looked into the distance. The bald middle-aged man had taken Shu Tianzi and fled at the same time as the other two people. Shu Tianzi, who was being carried on his shoulder, was still shouting loudly, wanting Yang Kai to pay the price and so on. Yang Kai's figure flashed and was about to chase after them, but who would have thought that a pulling force would drag him from behind? Only then did he remember that Young Inflammation had been holding onto his clothes. From the strength of this pulling force, it seemed that Young Inflammation had used even more strength. Looking back at her, he was shocked to find that Young Inflammation's face was extremely pale, her spirit was quite weak, and her tender body was trembling, like a quail that had nowhere to hide in the cold winter. Young Inflammation! Yang Kai was shocked. He thought that Young Inflammation had been secretly poisoned by these people, so he didn't care about killing them all. Instead, he sent out a burst of spiritual energy towards the bald middle-aged man and Shu Tianzi. A faint blue light burst from Shu Tianzi's waist, offsetting some of the damage from Yang Kai's spiritual energy attack. Even so, Shu Tianzi fainted without a word. The bald middle-aged man coughed up a mouthful of blood as if his head had been pierced by thousands of needles. His knowledge trembled and his soul was nearly destroyed. How is this possible? The bald middle-aged man was horrified. He hadn't expected that not only was Yang Kai's Saint Chi so powerful, but even his spiritual energy was so terrifying. He was 2 minor realms higher than Yang Kai, but he had still almost been killed. If it weren't for Shu Tianzi's soul-type artifact, the two of them might have died already. Not daring to delay any longer, he hurriedly fled with Shu Tianzi as fast as he could. Chapter 11-13. Young Inflammation. Yang Kai nervously supported Young Inflammation as he swept her with his divine sense. After a while, he calmed down and found that things were not as he had thought. Young Inflammation had not suffered any kind of vicious attack and there were no traces of injuries on her body, but she seemed to have suffered a great shock, causing her current mental state to be somewhat unstable. Gently patting her back, Young Inflammation struggled to look up at Yang Kai, her face suddenly turning even paler as she struggled to run to the side and began retching violently, seemingly vomiting out all of her internal organs. Yang Kai stared at her with a strange expression. After a long time, Yang Inflammation whispered, "Yang Kai, I feel a little dizzy." As soon as she finished speaking, she fell straight to the ground. What? Yang Kai didn't know whether to laugh or cry and quickly stepped forward to support her, only to find that she really had fainted, her small face still pale and bloodless, her soft body cold. Yang Kai sighed, shaking his head as he picked up Yang Inflammation and walked towards the cave. The interior of the cave was not much damaged. After all, the battle here had been too short, and the 7-colored spirit-gathering flags that Yang Kai had arranged had not been taken away. Returning to the stone room, Yang Kai placed Yang Inflammation on the bed and covered her with a quilt, looking at her unconscious face with some pity and amusement. Yang Kai had originally planned to kill that Shu Tianzi, but now that Yang Inflammation was in such a state, it was not convenient for him to leave, so he could only stand by and watch. Yang Kai had not been on Shadowed Star for long and had always held the mentality of not causing trouble, but now that he had attracted some trouble for no reason, he was naturally not willing to return alive. But even if Shu Tianzi went back and found some helpers, Yang Kai was not afraid. According to Wu Yi, there were no Origin King Realm Masters on Shadowed Star, and the strongest master in her Haiku family was only a third-order Saint King. That Shu Tianzi obviously wasn't from a great force, so it was unlikely he would be able to find a decent master. Yang Inflammation slept for several days. No one knew what kind of nightmares she was having. From time to time, she would scream and look very frightened. Every time, she would need Yang Kai to calm her down. 3 days later, Yang Inflammation slowly woke up. Yang Kai sat by the bed and looked at her. After staring at Yang Kai for a while, Yang Inflammation shyly turned her head away and blushed. "Eat something first." Yang Kai casually threw a package over. It seemed that Yang Inflammation smelled the fragrance of the fruit, and it seemed that he really needed to replenish his strength. He immediately got up and opened the package. When he saw some yellow fruits inside, he beamed with joy and ate them. His pale face gradually became rosy. Seeing her complexion improve, Yang Kai asked curiously, "Have you never seen a dead person before?" The reason why Yang Inflammation fell into a coma was not because she was injured, but because she was frightened. She had been frightened by the tragic deaths of the people who had died in front of her. Yang Kai had long known that she was timid, but he hadn't expected her to be timid to this extent. Just because a few irrelevant people had died, she had fallen into a coma for 3 days. If she had seen such a bloody battlefield, how could she still live? However, Yang Kai also knew that everyone had a first time. Although his first time killing people wasn't as bad as Yang Inflammation's, his mood had also fluctuated greatly. It was just that his endurance was much stronger than Yang Inflammation's, and his psychological strength was also not something she could compare to. Yang Kai's question caused Yang Inflammation, who was eating with relish, to immediately put down the fruit in her hand and cover her mouth. "Are you serious?" Yang Kai was surprised, thinking that it had been 3 days, and there were still sequelae. How in the world did this girl survive in this chaotic world? With her courage and ability, Yang Kai felt that it was a miracle that she could grow up safely. Yang Inflammation's face was bitter, and she didn't speak. She just waved at Yang Kai and took deep breaths. After a while, she gradually calmed down. "I have seen dead people before, but I have never seen such a disgusting way to die." Yang Inflammation looked at Yang Kai with some lingering fear. Those people were burned alive, and the most unbearable thing for her was the burnt smell that rushed into her nostrils. She never knew that roasted human flesh would smell like this. "Ari, the next time I kill someone, you should close your eyes." Yang Kai sighed. "There will be a next time?" Yang Inflammation's face was bitter. "Maybe." Yang Kai nodded. "Let's not talk about this, you continue to eat." Yang Inflammation nodded and grabbed the fruit to eat again. After eating for a while, she asked curiously, "Where did you get this? It seems to be able to clear one's mind and restore one's strength." "Someone gave it to me." Yang Kai didn't say who it was. Although these fruits were rare, they weren't very valuable, otherwise, Chen Tong wouldn't have been so generous. "By the way, did you buy the ores?" Yang Inflammation asked again. "I bought them, but you should rest for a few days. When you recover, you can start refining again." Yang Kai really didn't trust her to help him refine origin-grade artifacts in such a state. Artifact refining and alchemy both required an extremely stable state of mind. Once there was external interference, it could cause irreparable damage. Good. Yang Inflammation rested for a few more days before taking a large number of precious ores from Yang Kai and entering into artifact refining retreat. She seemed to have forgotten everything that had happened before. This woman's mind was relatively simple. Although she was as timid as a mouse, such a person's life wasn't tiring because she didn't think too much and was easily satisfied. His stone room and the 7-colored spirit-gathering flags were occupied by Yang Inflammation. Yang Kai left the cave and found a quiet place to sit down cross-legged. Looking at the clouds and mist around him, he was very satisfied with the changes in this place. It had been several months since the spirit array had been arranged in this mountain and the gathering of world energy had begun to take effect. The mist floating above the mountain peak was getting thicker and thicker, indicating that the world energy here was gradually becoming stronger. Yang Kai himself wasn't in the cave, but his divine sense was constantly monitoring it, fearing that Yang Inflammation would have an accident, or that Shu Tianziyi would find someone to take revenge on Yang Inflammation and disturb her artifact refining. Yang Inflammation was now refining the origin-grade defensive artifact that Yang Kai had requested. At such a critical moment, Yang Kai would not allow any accidents to occur. Time passed day by day and everything was peaceful. One day, Yang Kai was meditating when a voice suddenly sounded in his mind, "I've recovered." Hearing this voice, Yang Kai was overjoyed and immediately realized that the divine tree had woken up. Last time on Rainfall Star, in order to expel the profound yin sunflower water from Shueyu's body, Yang Kai had used the divine tree's power, causing it to consume too much energy and fall into a deep sleep. Now, several years later, the divine tree had finally woken up. "How do you feel?" Yang Kai immediately sent a message. "Not bad. It's just that you don't seem to have changed much. Did I only sleep for a short time?" The divine tree was puzzled. When Yang Kai borrowed its power, he was a third-order saint, and now he was still a third-order saint. His cultivation hadn't improved much, which was not in line with Yang Kai's aptitude. "It's been several years, I don't know exactly how long." "Then how did you?" "There was an accident." Yang Kai chuckled and told the divine tree about what happened in the body-tempering divine pond. Yang Kai didn't hide anything from this Yang attribute divine tree that had its own consciousness. Its consciousness was something he had stimulated, so it had a great deal of dependence on him. Although it was a tree, it was somewhat like a companion to Yang Kai. Yang Kai had always remembered the promise he had made to it, which was to find a suitable place for it to take root and recuperate. However, for so many years, he had been constantly running around without much time to settle down. Although he had visited many places, he had never found a suitable place, and the divine tree had never urged him, causing Yang Kai to blush with shame. "Oh, you mean to say that although your realm hasn't changed much, you've obtained a mysterious golden blood?" The divine tree seemed to be very interested in his golden blood. "Do you want to try?" "Good." Yang Kai immediately squeezed out a drop of golden blood and dropped it into the demon mystic tome, where it was absorbed by the divine tree. A moment later, Yang Kai's expression became one of surprise. Although Yang Kai did not know what had happened to the divine tree after absorbing his drop of golden blood, there was a close connection between him and the divine tree, one that was even firmer than before, allowing them to communicate with each other much more easily than before. Yang Kai immersed himself in this and could even feel the joy and excitement of the divine tree. Its broad branches and leaves were constantly shaking, as if it had been greatly nourished, sending out an extremely satisfied message to his soul. After a long time, the divine tree let out a long sigh of relief and said excitedly, "The vitality contained in your golden blood is too great, and it seems that without the previous restriction of yang liquid, this golden blood can be absorbed by any attribute world spirit treasure, enhancing their vitality and greatly shortening their growth cycle. Previously, yang liquid could only be used on yang attribute spirit grasses and spirit medicines, but golden blood was different. There was no such restriction at all because the vitality contained in golden blood could be absorbed by any spirit grass or spirit medicine. The divine tree had originally borne several dozen small fruits, which Yang Kai had eaten a long time ago and contained a large amount of Yang attribute energy. These small fruits had only grown later, and the growth of these fruits was extremely slow. After so many years, they were only the size of grapes, but after a drop of golden blood was absorbed by the divine tree, these fruits began to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye, only stopping when they were the size of walnuts. Interesting, Yang Kai smiled. It seems that it will be a good choice for me to cultivate spirit grasses and spirit medicines in the future. Yang Kai had been exploring the magical effects of his golden blood all this time. Previously, a drop of golden blood had escaped into the starry sky and was still shuttling back and forth through the star field. Yang Kai could constantly use his divine sense to investigate the situation around his golden blood, and now that he had discovered that his golden blood was of great help to the growth of spirit grasses and spirit medicines, it was a pleasant surprise. Since it's helpful to you, I'll give you a few more drops, Yang Kai said, not being stingy, squeezing out a few more drops of golden blood and sending them into the demon mystic tome. The divine tree didn't have time to stop him. Although it was a world spirit treasure, it already had its own sentience and knew that such a drop of golden blood was not easy to obtain, but since Yang Kai had already squeezed out a drop, he naturally couldn't waste it and simply absorbed it all. Chapter 11:14. 4 drops of golden blood. If Yang Kai had relied on meditation to cultivate, he would have had to meditate for 12 months, which was a full year, before he could condense these 4 drops of golden blood with his accumulated Saint Qi. The divine tree absorbed them all in just a moment. Just as Yang Kai was about to ask about the situation, the divine tree sent him a message. I seem to be going to sleep again. What do you mean? Yang Kai was shocked, wondering if the vitality contained in the golden blood was so strong that even the divine tree couldn't bear it. This is a good thing. I think that after I wake up, I will break through. You don't have to worry about that. If you have time, take a look at those 2 pitch-black stones. They seem to be a bit strange, the divine tree said before falling into a deep sleep. No matter how Yang Kai called out, there was no response. The divine tree can also break through? Yang Kai's expression became strange, but since the divine tree said so, it shouldn't be wrong. Yang Kai couldn't help looking forward to it, wondering what kind of changes the divine tree would undergo after it woke up again. What Yang Kai cared about now was the last words the divine tree said before it fell asleep, asking him to take a look at the 2 pitch-black stones. Only then did Yang Kai remember that it had been a long time since he had paid any attention to these 2 strange pitch-black round stones. Ever since he had spent a lot of Saint crystals on Water Moonstar to purchase countless rare ores as nutrients for them, he had completely forgotten about these 2 pitch-black round stones. Quickly immersing himself in the demon mystic tome, Yang Kai began examining them. At first glance, Yang Kai was dumbfounded. The mountain-like pile of rare ores had all disappeared at this moment. The essence of these ores had obviously been absorbed by the 2 pitch-black round stones, leaving only some impurities behind. Among these impurities, there was a fairly obvious vitality that Yang Kai could even hear a strong heartbeat. What's going on? Yang Kai pushed aside the impurities and immediately saw the 2 pitch-black round stones. These 2 stones were now somewhat different. Both stones exuded a vigorous vitality, but only one of them was giving off a heartbeat. Are these things alive? Yang Kai couldn't believe his eyes and quickly took out the 2 pitch-black round stones and placed them in front of him. He looked at it carefully and was soon shocked. The pitch-black round stone that emitted the heartbeat was wriggling slowly inside, as if there was a living creature wrapped in it. The clear lines on the surface of the round stone were as complicated as the meridians of the human body. It looked like the protruding belly of a pregnant woman, and within that belly was a new life. The other piece was different. It did not have the sound of a heartbeat, but the vitality it exuded was just as strong. Yang Kai stared blankly, not knowing what to do. Although he had owned these 2 pitch-black round stones for many years, he still knew nothing about their secrets. He immediately recalled what Gui Zhu had said to him on the floating continent. Take good care of them. You'll be surprised one day. Gui Zhu was an Origin King Realm master who had lived for 2,000 years and was extremely knowledgeable. He clearly knew what these 2 pitch-black round stones were, But at that time, Yang Kai's relationship with him was not very harmonious, so Yang Kai did not ask about them. Gui Zhu also did not take the initiative to tell him, so even now, Yang Kai was still confused about them. These two pitch-black round stones were brought over from Tongxian realm. Since Gui Zhu recognized them, it meant that they were originally products of Starfield, but Yang Kai did not know how they had ended up in Tongxian realm. Was it time for him to be surprised? Yang Kai sat cross-legged on the spot and began circulating his secret art while paying attention to the movements of Yang Inflammation and the two pitch-black round stones. Time flew by and more than 10 days passed. The two pitch-black round stones had not changed much, but Yang Kai was very impatient. He was very eager to know what these two stones in front of him were hiding and whether there was really a living creature inside. After thinking about it, Yang Kai carefully squeezed out a drop of golden blood and dripped it onto the round stone from which the heartbeat was coming. Since his golden blood contained a huge amount of vitality, allowing the divine tree to enter a dormant state of evolution, there was no reason it would not work on this pitch-black round stone. As soon as his golden blood dripped onto it, the heartbeat coming from inside the pitch-black round stone really did become much more violent. The golden blood seeped into it, causing the whole stone to exude a fierce golden glow. Some obvious changes appeared on the round stone as the meridian-like lines on its surface pulsed, as if something was about to break out of its shell. Yang Kai stared unblinkingly, not wanting to miss a single detail. Catcher. A crisp sound rang out, causing Yang Kai to shiver as he couldn't help feeling a little nervous. A small crack appeared on the pitch-black round stone, and soon, this crack grew larger and spread rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the whole pitch-black round stone split open from the middle, revealing what was inside. Yang Kai saw this and was instantly dumbfounded. Although he had some guesses in his heart, when he saw the scene in front of him, he was still dumbfounded. There really was a living creature inside the pitch-black round stone. It was basically an egg that was madly absorbing the essence of minerals. Yang Kai had cultivated it for so many years, consuming countless rare ores, but now, he had finally managed to cultivate something inside it to the point of breaking out of its shell. At this moment, a grey thing was sitting in front of Yang Kai. It looked like a stone sculpture, its whole body exuding a simple luster. It had 4 limbs, a head, and clear facial features. It was clearly a stone golem only the size of a palm. Just as Yang Kai was looking at it, it slowly stood up, a look of great difficulty on its face as it staggered, almost falling to the ground again. Yang Kai's eyes were sharp and his hands were quickly helping it up. Its arms were extraordinarily long, reaching all the way to the ground, its back was slightly stooped, its legs were bent, and its body was composed of delicate pieces of stone, giving it a very angular appearance. Although it had facial features, it looked quite simple-minded, and when combined with its clumsy movements, it was as dumb as could be. Yang Kai was stunned. It turned its head and looked around blankly, but when its grey eyes saw Yang Kai, it paused for a moment. Because it had absorbed a drop of Yang Kai's golden blood, it seemed to be very curious about Yang Kai, and just like the divine tree, Yang Kai felt that there was an inseparable connection between him and this stone golem. After looking at it for a while, it no longer paid attention to Yang Kai and instead stretched out its 2 long arms, picked up the pitch-black stone shell on the ground, put it into its mouth, and began chewing. Seeing this stone golem eat with relish, Yang Kai couldn't help sighing in his heart. What the hell is this thing? Although Yang Kai had never tried this pitch-black stone shell before, he knew that it was extremely hard. After all, it had absorbed the essence of ores for so many years, and after so many years of precipitation, its defensive power was no less than an origin-grade defensive artifact, perhaps even stronger. However, this pitch-black stone shell was as fragile as tofu in the mouth of this little stone golem. After a while, the pitch-black stone shell was eaten clean, leaving nothing behind. After eating the stone shell, the little stone golem seemed to be a little tired and staggered over to Yang Kai, climbing up Yang Kai's thigh. Yang Kai wanted to test this little stone golem's ability, so he stretched out his hand and flicked it on the forehead. The little stone golem immediately turned into a rolling gourd and rolled away. Yang Kai's face went black as he thought to himself, I've cultivated this thing for so many years and consumed so many ores, yet this is all I've managed to raise. Although it's hard enough, it seems to be a bit fragile." The little stone golem stood up, shook its head, and walked over to young Kai again. After finally reaching young Kai's side, it continued to climb up his thigh. Young Kai didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but this time he didn't flick it and just let it climb up his body. It didn't care about this, as long as it was on young Kai's body, it directly lay down on its back, closed its eyes, and fell asleep. Young Kai looked at it, shook his head, and sighed. He didn't despise this little guy for being useless, it was just a little different from his original expectations. Young Kai thought he would be able to obtain 2 high-quality ores and was planning to cultivate them until the time was right to use these 2 pitch-black round stones to create an Origin King-grade artifact. How could he have known this little stone golem would appear? This was a little disappointing. Looking at it for a while though, young Kai suddenly froze as his eyes focused on the chest of the little stone golem, where a dark red light was faintly discernible. Immediately, young Kai used his soul escape technique to become the demon race mystic tome and carefully searched for it. After a while, young Kai took back his soul sense and wore a strange expression. He finally understood why the 2 pitch-black round stones were somewhat different. It was because of the blood essence stone. The blood essence stone he had placed inside the demon mystic tome was now on the chest of this little stone golem, seemingly acting as its heart. Young Kai only had 1 blood essence stone, and now that it was occupied by this little stone golem, the other pitch-black round stone naturally wouldn't emit any heartbeat sounds. Young Kai believed that there was definitely a little stone golem inside the pitch-black round stone, but without the blood essence stone acting as its heart, it shouldn't be able to break out of its shell. Was there a relationship between the blood essence stone and this thing? Young Kai became more and more confused, unable to figure out what was going on for a while. Yang Yang was still refining the Origin-grade defensive artifact and seemed to have reached a critical juncture. The energy fluctuations coming from the cave were much stronger than before, so young Kai stood guard outside, not daring to disturb him casually. However, he wasn't bored right now. Since the appearance of this little stone golem, young Kai had been studying its secrets. Several days had passed, but the little guy hadn't grown up at all. On the other hand, it was very interested in the location of Yang Yang. When young Kai wasn't paying attention, it would try to run in that direction, as if there was something there that attracted it. With no other choice, young Kai could only order it not to approach the cave. After a few days of observation, young Kai also discovered a problem. Although this little stone golem showed signs of life and could be regarded as a kind of living creature, it didn't have much ability to think. Unlike the divine tree, this little stone golem's intelligence was very low and everything it did relied on instinct to act. Other than that, it only obeyed young Kai's orders. Chapter 11:15. Young Kai didn't know if it was because it had absorbed the golden blood, but the little stone man was absolutely obedient to young Kai, carrying out all of his orders meticulously. However, even if young Kai wanted to communicate with it, he couldn't. He had hoped that the little stone man would evolve his own sentience like the divine tree, but looking at the current situation, this was somewhat impossible. It was more like a puppet with a life of its own. A few days later, young Kai discovered that the little stone man had a very strange ability, which was to dig holes in the ground. The speed at which the little stone man dug holes in the mountain was incredible. Young Kai had discovered this by accident. Because of his orders, the little stone man didn't dare to approach the cave where young inflammation was, but for some reason, it always wanted to drill deeper into the ground. In just a breath of time, it had drilled several dozen meters into the ground, and no matter how hard the ground was, it couldn't stop its progress. Young Kai also experimented with some hard ores and found that no matter how hard the ores were, the little stone man could easily drill a large hole in them. This ability was quite good, but young Kai didn't understand why it had such an ability. Looking at its square head, young Kai really couldn't figure out how it was able to do this. Young Kai originally thought that there might be some kind of rare ore in the ground that attracted the little stone man, but after careful investigation, young Kai rejected this idea. On the entire Dragon Cave Mountain, there were no spirit grasses, spirit medicines, or valuable ores. Before young Kai arranged the spirit array, aside from its beautiful scenery, it was nothing but a barren mountain. Even now, the only difference was that the world energy aura here was slightly richer than elsewhere, but there wasn't anything special about it. As long as Dragon Cave Mountain wasn't emptied out, young Kai didn't bother with this little guy. It had only been able to break out of its shell because he had inadvertently obtained a blood essence stone, but the little stone man wrapped in a pitch-black round stone wasn't so lucky. If young Kai wanted it to come out, he would probably need to find another blood essence stone. However, this kind of thing was really too rare. Young Kai had been in star territory for some time now, but he had never heard of anyone possessing a blood essence stone. It seemed that even in star territory, blood essence stones were rare goods. On this day, young Kai was meditating when he suddenly felt a shocking energy fluctuation from the cave. This energy fluctuation disappeared in a flash, and in the next moment, young Inflammation's triumphant laughter reached his ears. Success! Young Kai's expression filled with joy, and he quickly rushed into the cave. Inside the stone room, the human-sized furnace was still exuding an astonishing amount of heat. Young Inflammation stood in place with her clothes dripping wet. It was obvious that she had expended a great deal of effort to refine this artifact and was sweating profusely. Even her hair was disheveled, making her look like a madwoman. The black robe she was wearing had been taken off at some point, leaving her in only a thin gauze skirt. Her clothes were soaked in sweat and stuck tightly to her body. When young Kai rushed in, the first thing he saw was not his artifact, but an extremely alluring figure. Her round buttocks were ridiculously perky, as if a pair of big hands were holding them up, giving her an enchanting demeanor. The exaggerated curve of her waist was captivating while her lower abdomen was flat and smooth. Through her wet clothes, young Kai could clearly see the shape and color of the undergarments young Inflammation was wearing. A pair of pink undergarments, about the size of a palm, just enough to cover the most sensitive parts of her body, causing one's imagination to run wild. Underneath her upper body was a light red doo-doo, and the two protrusions on her chest were obvious. Young Kai was stunned for a moment, not knowing whether he should withdraw or not. Young Inflammation, on the other hand, ran over excitedly, not even noticing that her body was somewhat exposed. Handing over an oval-shaped artifact to young Kai, she said softly, Look, this is an origin-grade low-rank artifact. I didn't lie to you, I'm an origin-grade artifact refiner." Young Kai took it and found that this shield-shaped artifact was much lighter than he had imagined, seemingly weightless. However, the surface of the shield was filled with a faint purple light. Young Kai knew that this was the natural luster of the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion's carapace. The surface of the shield was not flat and had sharp barbs on it, but young Kai didn't know what they were for. However, young Kai keenly discovered that this shield was filled with the power of the earth and wind attributes. Seeing his careful observation, young Inflammation immediately took the initiative to explain, I also integrated the monster core of the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion into it. The main material of this shield was originally the carapace of the monster beast, so after integrating its monster core, it will gain some of the abilities of the monster beast when it was alive. Of course, you'll have to explore this on your own because I don't know what abilities this scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion had when it was alive. Sandstorm? Young Kai muttered to himself, immediately recalling the place where he had discovered the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion when he had followed Gui Che and the others. At that time, the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion had been hiding in a sandstorm that covered a radius of several dozen kilometers. Sandstorm? Young Inflammation nodded, not bad, this shield is the result of my blood, sweat, and tears. You should use it carefully in the future. Not only can it be used for defense, but the spikes on the shield can also be used to counterattack. If you use it well, you'll have no problem fighting those above your realm. No, you definitely won't have any problems fighting those above your realm. With such an artifact in hand, I guarantee that no Saint King realm cultivator will be able to hurt you. Unless you're going to stand there and let others use you as a target. As young Inflammation spoke, he patted his chest vigorously, making a solemn vow, completely ignoring the fact that young Kai had killed several Saint King realm cultivators with his own strength a few days ago. Her small hand patted her soft chest but was bounced away by the towering jade peaks. Her surname seems to be quite amazing. Yang Kai couldn't help glancing over at her white and deep cleavage. If it weren't for you rushing me this time, I could have refined it even better, but it doesn't matter. Origin grade low rank is only its temporary grade. If you can find better ores in the future, I can refine it even more and raise its grade. I'm talking to you. Are you listening? What are you looking at? Yang Inflammation didn't know why Yang Kai was showing such an absent-minded look, but when he looked down, he immediately understood why Yang Kai was like this. Her cheeks, which had been flushed red from the high temperature, suddenly became even redder, as if blood was about to drip from them. After 3 breaths, a scream rang out from the cave as Yang Inflammation squatted on the ground, holding her arms across her chest to block the exposed spring scenery, glaring at Yang Kai bitterly as she cursed, "Rogue, shameless, shameless. I worked so hard to refine this artifact for you, yet you actually. She felt wronged. Yang Kai just grinned and didn't say anything. After she cursed a few more times, Yang Kai said, "There's a pool over there. The water is from a mountain stream. Go wash yourself." "I know." Yang Inflammation bit her red lips and hugged herself tightly, urging, "Get out." Good, I'll go." Yang Kai nodded quickly, but before he could leave, a rustling sound came from under Yang Inflammation's feet. Immediately, a small hole appeared in the ground and a grey head poked out. On this slightly square head, a pair of eyes stared blankly at Yang Inflammation. "Why?" Yang Inflammation screamed even louder, slapping the small grey head into the hole before jumping up like a frightened rabbit and directly into Yang Kai's arms. With a soft and warm body in his arms, and 2 full breasts pressing against him, Yang Kai suddenly felt a little restless. What made him feel the most speechless was that Yang Inflammation's 2 legs actually wrapped around his waist. He knew she was timid, but it seemed he had overestimated her courage. She seemed to be extremely scared, her tender body trembling as she hugged Yang Kai tightly, constantly looking back, her beautiful eyes filled with fear. After discovering that there was nothing in the hole, she couldn't help but ask, "What was that? What was that? I felt like it was looking at me just now." Yang Kai didn't know how to explain this. The little stone man, who was usually very obedient, had actually run into the cave on his own today and had even drilled out of the ground. No wonder Yang had been scared half to death. "Is it gone?" Yang Inflammation asked again. "It's gone. Is it really gone?" She released her divine sense and found that there really wasn't anything there. Only then did she let out a heavy sigh. Coming back to her senses, she was stunned to find herself hugging Kai Yang's neck, hanging from his body in an unsightly manner. Their 2 bodies were tightly pressed together, their lower abdomens pressed against each other's lower abdomen, and a fiery hot breath rushed towards her. Yang Inflammation felt like she was about to smoke. She had never been so close to a man before. She didn't know why, but the blood in her body started to flow quickly, and the thumping sound of her heartbeat came from her chest. It was even more intense than the beating of a war drum, and the breath that rushed towards her made her feel like she was suffocating. She couldn't wait to drill into the small hole that had appeared in the ground and never come out again. In particular, Yang Kai's strange smile made her feel even more ashamed. You put me down." Yang Inflammation's head almost touched her chest as she weakly shouted. "I'm not hugging you." Yang Kai spread out his hands. Yang Inflammation was ashamed and angry. She found that it was because her hands were hugging Yang Kai's neck and her legs were riding on his waist that the 2 of them were so close. She quickly let go of her hands and feet and fell to the ground. She couldn't help but cry out, "Are you all right?" Yang Kai looked at her speechlessly. He was too embarrassed to pull her up. This woman was not only timid, but also thin-skinned. Even if he pulled her, she probably wouldn't get up. "I'm fine." Yang Inflammation curled up into a ball and really didn't get up. She covered her face and said, "Can you go out first? I want to wash the dust off my body." "Oh." Yang Kai nodded. Holding back his laughter, he turned and walked out. Outside the cave, the little stone golem was swaying back and forth as if it was drunk. It accidentally tripped over its right leg and fell flat on its face. Struggling to get up, he raised his head and stared at Yang Kai innocently. "Good job. Kai Yang suddenly discovered that this little guy's facial features were delicate and pretty, and he was smart and witty. Where was his previous foolish appearance? Chapter 11:16. Yang Kai waited outside for a while, thinking about how to resolve the awkwardness between him and Yang Inflammation. Yang Kai was a man with thick skin, so he didn't care about this kind of thing and could simply laugh it off, but Yang Inflammation was different. At a glance, he could tell she was an inexperienced woman who had never been so intimate with a man before. Shui Yu, on the other hand, was completely different. Even if Yang Kai was hugging her naked, Shui Yu would still be able to remain calm and negotiate with him. They were two completely different types of women. If because of this incident, Yang Inflammation was too embarrassed to see him again, or if she ran away in anger, what would he do? If he lost the materials, Yang Kai wouldn't feel distressed, but he couldn't lose Yang Inflammation. She was a rare talent. Yang Kai had only arrived on Shadowed Star recently, so he didn't know many people. If he really wanted to use this place as a springboard to spread his name across the entire territory of Shadowed Star, relying on brute force alone wouldn't be enough. He needed to gather some rare talents to act as a backup. Should I apologize and say some sweet words to her? Yang Kai hesitated. Yang Inflammation was a simple girl, so he estimated that a few sweet words would be enough to make her let go of the grudge in her heart, but Yang Kai was also worried that this little girl would misunderstand and hurt her feelings. Ah! Yang Kai scratched his head. Just as he was struggling, Yang Inflammation, who had just washed her body and was wearing a black robe, suddenly ran out of the cave and ran straight towards him. Yang Kai, come with me. Yang Inflammation's face flashed an indescribable light, seemingly both excited and nervous. Rushing over to Yang Kai, she grabbed his hand and dragged him into the cave in a hurry. What's wrong? Yang Kai was stunned. He hadn't expected Yang Inflammation to not mention what had just happened. This was really unexpected. He even thought Yang Inflammation would hide in the cave and not see him for a few days. I think I found something. Come and take a look. She couldn't explain it clearly. She pulled Yang Kai into the cave and went to the place where they were just now. She pointed at the small hole in the ground and said, "Did you see anything here? Did you see clearly what that thing that scared me was?" Seeing her staring at the small hole with a pair of beautiful eyes, even using her divine sense to explore it, Yang Kai's heart trembled. Do you know it? If Yang Inflammation didn't know, he wouldn't have such a reaction. I might know him. Yang nodded. But it might not be what I think it is. Can you track the location of that creature through this small hole? If you can catch it, I can study it carefully. What do you think it is? Yang Kai hurriedly asked. Yang Inflammation shook her head and frowned. Before I saw it clearly, I wasn't sure. I just caught a glimpse of it. After thinking about it carefully, I felt that it was somewhat similar. Can you track it or not? There's no need to track it. Don't. Yang Inflammation misunderstood Yang Kai's meaning. She grabbed his arm and shook it, begging, "Help me track it. I'm really curious about it. If you can help me track it, I. Yang Inflammation's face turned red as if she remembered something shameful. She hesitated for a long time before gritting her teeth and saying, "I won't pursue what happened just now. I'm not responsible for what happened just now." Yang Kai was speechless. He thought that women were really unreasonable. Yang Inflammation pursed her lips. Although she knew that Yang Kai wasn't responsible for what happened just now, she was the one who jumped into Yang Kai's arms and refused to let go. But after all, she was taken advantage of. Thinking about it made her feel wronged. Just help me this time. I already helped you refine. Yang Inflammation could only continue to plead. There's no need to track it. Yang Kai shook his head. I'll just call it over. Call it over? Yang Inflammation was stunned. She looked at Yang Kai in astonishment. She didn't quite understand what he meant. But a moment later, that kind of rustling sound came from underground again. Yang Inflammation was quite bold this time. Or it could be said that she was looking forward to it. She opened her eyes wide and looked in the direction of the sound without blinking. Suddenly, a small hole appeared on the ground, and the grey, squarish head carefully poked out from it. Young Inflammation's expression became even more excited. Her breathing became rapid. The little stone man seemed to be a little afraid of young Inflammation, who had slapped it. Although its intelligence was very low and it could only follow its instincts, it still remembered who had slapped it. As soon as he saw the face in front of him, the little stone man immediately climbed out of the hole. His movements were unbelievably agile as he quickly ran to Yang Kai's feet and grabbed his clothes to climb up. Young Inflammation was stunned. Her eyes followed the little stone man all the way up. It wasn't until the little guy climbed onto Yang Kai's shoulder and hid behind him that she suddenly screamed. "Stone Clan!" Yang Kai noticed that her pretty face was distorted. He didn't know whether it was because of excitement or something else. After calling out, Yang seemed to realize something was wrong and immediately covered her mouth again, sending her divine sense forward to investigate, a look of extreme caution on her face. "Stone Clan?" Yang Kai frowned. He took the little guy from his shoulder and placed it in his palm, asking, "Do you know it?" Young Inflammation looked up at Yang Kai and nodded. She suddenly realized, "This stone clan is yours." If it wasn't Yang Kai, how could he have caught it so easily? How could he have ordered it to come over? Young Inflammation suddenly felt a little dizzy. She found that she had once again underestimated Yang Kai's background. He had so many precious materials, so many high-grade artifacts, and could easily kill Saint Kings. Now, he even had a heaven-defying existence like the Stone Clan. What kind of freak was he? But why hadn't she seen this Stone Clan before? "It's mine. Tell me, what's the deal with the Stone Clan?" Yang Kai also became interested. He had been studying the secrets of the little stone man these days, but unfortunately, he hadn't gained anything. He hadn't expected that Young Inflammation would actually recognize it. "Can I have a closer look?" "I'm still not sure." Young Inflammation looked at the little stone man expectantly. Yang Kai nodded and tossed it over. Young Inflammation's character was still trustworthy. On top of that, he wanted Young Inflammation to solve his doubts. Young Inflammation caught the little stone man with both hands and glared at Yang Kai fiercely, as if blaming him for being so rude. Suddenly, she put on a gentle face and held the little stone man in front of her, examining it from head to toe. In the face of this woman who had inexplicably slapped him, the little stone man seemed to be a little afraid. He stood up several times and wanted to return to Yang Kai, but Yang Kai had no choice but to give him an order to calm him down. "It's a blood essence stone, there's no mistaking it. This really is the Stone Clan. Heavens, didn't they say this race was extinct? How could they still be alive?" Young Inflammation observed for a while and excitedly muttered to herself, holding the little stone man tightly, unwilling to let go. Yang Kai's face went black as he took the little stone man back from her hands. "I haven't seen it yet, let me take a look again." At this moment, Young Inflammation didn't care about the previous embarrassing matter with Yang Kai. Her whole mind was attracted by the little stone man, as if it had a strong attraction to this woman. "Since you recognize it, tell me clearly. After you tell me clearly, you can study it however you want." Yang Kai was still waiting for her answer. "You have it, but you don't know what it is." Young Inflammation looked at Yang Kai in surprise. "Why should I know?" Yang Kai looked at her indifferently. Young Inflammation's mouth twitched, as if she wanted to cry and laugh at the same time. After holding back for a long time, she gritted her teeth and said, "God is really unfair, why do you have this kind of thing? Why isn't it mine?" After feeling indignant for a while, she took the initiative to explain, "It's from the Stone Clan. I've already heard you say that the Stone Clan is a race, right?" "Yes." Young Inflammation nodded, "It's also called the Stone Mongoose. Since you have it, you should know that its intelligence is very low, right? It can be said that it has almost no intelligence, and its actions are completely based on its instincts and the orders of the person who subdued it. So even if it is a kind of creature, it can be considered a race, but it is still a kind of puppet." Yang Kai gently nodded, knowing that Young Inflammation was right. After these days of research, his findings were exactly the same as Young Inflammation's. They can only be born under a very special condition. Their initial form is a kind of pitch-black round stone. They are wrapped in the round stone and have no fluctuations of life, but as long as they absorb enough mineral essence, they will slowly grow until they are fully mature. You can think of them as eggs, but it's not quite the same. And in order for them to break out of their shells, they need something, and that is the blood essence stone. The blood essence stone is the heart of the Stone Clan. Without the blood essence stone, no matter how healthy the Stone Clan is, it can't truly live. This little thing has a blood essence stone in its heart, so I can be sure that it is from the Stone Clan. Sure enough, just as he had guessed, the blood essence stone was the heart of this little guy. The Stone Clan is very few in number, but the role they can play is unimaginable, so a long time ago, as long as a Stone Clan member appeared, they would attract the pursuit of countless people. All of them wanted to capture this Stone Clan member and turn it into their own stone mongoose. What role does it play? Young Kai asked quickly. Young Inflammation chuckled. Their growth depends on absorbing a lot of mineral essence, so they are very sensitive to rare minerals. As long as there is a good mine nearby, they will immediately discover it. Don't you think its usefulness is great? With a stone mongoose, one can obtain all kinds of mineral lodes that are unknown to others. Mineral lodes that an origin king can't find can't escape its detection. Young Kai's eyes lit up as he couldn't help looking at this little guy, thinking that it wasn't completely useless. Although it had a silly appearance, he hadn't expected it to have such an ability. Chapter 11:17. Young Inflammation continued. Finding ore veins is just one of the stone mongoose's abilities. It has another ability that all artifact refiners dream of, which is its ability to quench the essence of ores. With its assistance, an artifact refiner no longer has to work so hard to quench ores. The stone mongoose can do this easily, and better than any other artifact refiner. Alchemy required condensing medicinal liquids, while artifact refining required quenching ores. Both processes involved removing impurities from materials and preserving the essence. This process was indispensable in both alchemy and artifact refining. The more impurities were removed, the better the refined pill or artifact would be. Many times, an alchemist or artifact refiner's true ability could be seen from their methods of removing impurities. In this regard, Young Kai and Young Inflammation were among the best in their respective territories. However, the stone mongoose was born with the ability to remove impurities and quench ores, and its quenching was the most thorough, better than any other artifact refiner, which was why Young Inflammation was so interested in this little guy. What Young Kai didn't know was that the stone mongoose had another name, the strongest support for an artifact refiner. Whether it was its ability to find ore veins or quench ores, it was what artifact refiners needed the most. Young Kai, who wasn't an artifact refiner, actually owned a stone mongoose, which made Young Inflammation's eyes go red with jealousy. This was simply casting pearls before swine, a complete waste of heaven's gifts. If only this stone mongoose was his own. Continue, what other abilities does it have? Young Kai smiled. The more he looked at this little guy, the more pleasing he felt to his eyes. He hadn't expected that one of the two pitch-black round stones he brought from Tongxian realm would give birth to such a heaven-defying existence. Since it's a kind of puppet, it can naturally be used to fight. Young Inflammation sighed. You know that artifact refiners and alchemists are the same, their combat ability isn't strong, but the stone mongoose can make up for this. It's simply made for artifact refiners. Young Inflammation wasn't very interested in fighting, so he didn't go into too much detail. Young Kai frowned as he looked at the little thing in his hand. He couldn't figure out how it would fight. Such a palm-sized puppet, even if it had battle prowess, wouldn't it be very limited? Did he have to dig a hole in the ground? Its ability to drill into the ground was superb. Young Kai Gidge. Young Yang Yang's face was red as she called out coquettishly. Young Kai, who was thinking, shuddered and glared at her. Speak properly. Young Inflammation was not the kind of woman who would act coquettishly. Her pretentiousness made her lose her original charm. You stone mongoose, can you? You can't. Not waiting for her to finish, Kai Young interrupted her. Young Inflammation said bitterly, I haven't finished talking yet. I know what you want to say. You want it. Young Kai grinned meaningfully. That's impossible. I already have a connection with it. Even if I give it to you, it will only listen to my orders. You actually subdued it. Young Inflammation's eyes widened in disbelief. How did you subdue it? The stone mongoose is very difficult to subdue, unless you've been cultivating it before it fully matured. You're worth teaching. Young Kai grinned. He had been cultivating it for many years, and in the end, he even used a drop of golden blood to establish a subtle connection with the stone mongoose. I'm so angry. Young Inflammation stomped her foot. She originally wanted to take the stone mongoose, but when she heard Young Kai say that he had subdued it, she immediately calmed down. Because the stone mongoose didn't have any intelligence, once it recognized someone, it couldn't be taken away unless it was destroyed. Seeing the disappointed expression on Young Inflammation's face, Young Kai lightly coughed and said proudly, although it only listens to my orders, if you want to use it for artifact refining, I can lend it to you. In any case, I don't know how to refine artifacts. Really? Young Inflammation immediately smiled and clapped her hands. Great, with this, I can refine your artifact refining to origin grade mid-rank. The artifacts I refine will also be of the highest quality. Big brother Young Kai, you're too kind, I'm so happy to follow you. She was extremely satisfied. Come on, let me see how it quenches ores. Young Kai's curiosity was piqued. Just now, he had heard Young Inflammation say it was one thing, but now he wanted to see it with his own eyes. It's very simple, just watch. Young Inflammation said as she took out an origin grade ore from her space ring. This was a piece of celestial blue stone the size of a human head. Young Kai had bought it from Heavenly Fate City last time and had asked her to refine an origin grade artifact with it. Little guy, come here, elder sister has something delicious to eat. Young Inflammation held the celestial blue stone and waved to the stone mongoose. The stone mongoose immediately jumped out of Young Kai's hand and onto the celestial blue stone. Young Kai only heard a series of crunching sounds as the celestial blue stone was eaten clean by the stone mongoose in less than a breath of time. Its belly didn't grow at all, just like before. Young Kai was dumbfounded and exclaimed, so fast? Young Inflammation was also very excited. Although she knew the secrets of the stone mongoose, this was the first time she had seen a living creature. After the stone mongoose finished eating the celestial blue stone, she put it on the ground. What about now? Young Kai asked. Wait a moment. So, the two of them paid close attention to the stone mongoose's movements. Soon, Young Kai noticed that the stone mongoose's surface had dimmed a little, as if something had seeped out of its body and covered its originally smooth stone body. After a while, the stone mongoose became grey and lusterless. It shook its body gently, and the grey stone covering its body immediately fell off, falling to the ground and breaking into countless pieces. Young Inflammation explained, this is the impurities contained inside the celestial blue stone. All of its essence has been condensed out by it. After saying that, she turned to the stone mongoose and said in a pleasant tone, hurry up and spit it out. The stone mongoose stood there in a daze, unmoved. Young Inflammation knew that her order had no effect, so she could only look at Young Kai. Young Kai understood and immediately gave the stone mongoose an order. In the next moment, the stone mongoose opened its mouth and magically spat out a fist-sized piece of ore without any impurities. Young Kai's eyes lit up, and Young Inflammation was about to reach out to grab it. But another piece of ore was spat out by the stone mongoose. Then, like a hailstorm, more and more pieces of ore appeared and collided with each other, making light tinkling sounds. Young Kai was stunned, and so was Young Inflammation. The scene in front of them was a little different from what they had imagined. 10 breaths later, a small mountain of ores appeared before the two of them. The ores were translucent like crystals, emitting a dense halo of light. Only one of them was a little special, being azure in color. The stone mongoose stood there and swayed a little. It seemed to be a little tired and fell to the ground. However, Young Kai and Young Inflammation were no longer paying attention to it. They were both staring at the mountain of ores in front of them. Young Inflammation, can the stone mongoose produce so many ores after swallowing one? Young Kai felt that his question was a little funny. That's impossible. Young Inflammation didn't know how to explain it. He reached out and picked up the only piece of celestial bluestone from the pile of ores. After sensing it, he said, "This is celestial bluestone. It should be the one I fed it just now. It's been refined very well, and there are no impurities at all." Yang Kai also hurriedly picked up a piece and silently observed it. A moment later, his expression shook as he exclaimed, "This isn't celestial bluestone, it's space spirit crystal." Space spirit crystal? Yang Inflammation's beautiful face paled as she also picked up a piece, her small hands trembling as she said, "It really is space spirit crystal." She had been so shocked by the stone mongoose's performance that she hadn't paid much attention to what kind of ore it was until now. The two of them exchanged a glance as their hearts were filled with shock. No one knew what kind of ore was the most precious in this world, but it was undeniable that space spirit crystals were definitely one of the most precious ores. Space spirit crystals were extremely difficult to collect because unlike other ores, they didn't have their own mineral veins. They were an associated mineral called dark space stone. Dark space stone wasn't very valuable, and although it was sometimes used in artifact refining, it wasn't a high-grade ore. However, the associated space spirit crystals were different. They were extremely valuable. The space rings worn by cultivators and the space arrays used to cover them were all made of space spirit crystals. Often, in an entire dark space stone mineral vein, finding a washbasin-sized space spirit crystal was already considered a rich ore. It was very likely that there were no space spirit crystals at all. Searching for space spirit crystals required luck. If one was lucky, they would find some, but if one was unlucky, they would find nothing. Because the demand was too high and the production too low, the price of space spirit crystals had always been high. At this moment, a small mountain of space spirit crystals was placed in front of Yang Kai and Yang Inflammation, each piece the size of a fist. There were at least 300 to 400 pieces. Such a shocking amount of wealth shocked not only Yang Inflammation, but also Yang Kai. A single piece of space spirit crystal could be exchanged for at least 50,000 high-rank saint crystals, a value no less than an origin-grade artifact. It didn't make sense for the stone mongoose to produce so many space spirit crystals just by eating a piece of celestial bluestone. The only explanation was that it had stored them in its stomach before. Yang Kai. Yang Inflammation found her voice trembling. What kind of mineral load did this little thing go to before? Yang Kai shook his head. "I only cultivated it a few days ago. It used to stay inside that pitch-black round stone, but recently it has been running underground." Yang Inflammation couldn't help gulping as she asked weakly, "You mean?" Yang Kai took a deep breath and answered her with an affirmative look. Yang Inflammation covered her mouth, afraid that she would accidentally scream. A few hundred fist-sized space spirit crystals had already shocked her enough, but now she had learned such incredible information. Suddenly, she looked at Yang Kai with tears in her eyes. "Yang Kai, you won't kill me to silence me, right?" Chapter 11:18. In this world, in order to keep a secret, it was normal to kill and silence someone's family. Yang Yang had seen Yang Kai's ferocious killing intent. A first-order Saint King cultivator was nothing in front of him. She knew very well that if Yang Kai really wanted to kill her, with the strange power of his demonic flame, even if she had many artifacts, she might not be able to block it. At this moment, Yang Yang regretted knowing this big secret. Yang Kai glared at her. "What nonsense are you spouting?" Yang immediately laughed. "I knew you weren't such a person. Quickly put away these space spirit crystals. It won't be good if someone else sees them." Yang Kai nodded and quickly put the hundreds of space spirit crystals into his demon mystic tome. Even now, he was still in a bit of a daze. If these space spirit crystals were really mined by the stone mongoose recently, then the only possibility was under Dragon Cave Mountain because the stone mongoose had always run underground. But what Yang Kai couldn't understand was that he had clearly carefully investigated the situation underground but hadn't found any mineral lodes at all. If there really was a dark space stone mineral lode here, it was impossible for Wu Yi's Haiku family not to know about it. After all, this family had been rooted here for countless years. It was necessary to clarify this matter. Yang Kai reached out and picked up the stone mongoose before turning to Yang and saying, Come with me. Yang didn't ask any questions, seemingly knowing what Yang Kai wanted to do, and quickly followed behind him, a look of expectation on her pretty face. After leaving the cave, the two quickly arrived at a mountain valley more than 10 kilometers away. After finding a secluded spot, Yang Kai put down the stone mongoose and gave it a command to dig deeper. The stone mongoose soon disappeared, leaving only a small hole big enough for one person to pass through. In the past, the stone mongoose could only dig a small hole, but this time, Yang Kai had no choice but to make the hole bigger because he wanted to investigate underground. Yang Inflammation was even more excited. His little face was red as he stood by the side without saying a word, waiting to go down with Yang Kai. Half an hour later, Yang Kai winked at Yang and jumped into the deep pit in front of him. It had to be said that the stone mongoose's cave was a masterpiece. It was cylindrical, and the tunnel was extremely smooth, as if it had been polished with some kind of tool. After Yang Kai jumped in, he didn't encounter any resistance at all. He slid down without any hindrance. The tunnel was very deep, and it was hard to imagine that it had only taken an hour to dig it out. Yang Kai had learned a lot about the stone mongoose's abilities. After sliding down for the time it took to burn a stick of incense, Yang Kai suddenly felt that he had reached the end of the tunnel. For no reason, he had an illusion that he was falling from a high altitude. He quickly stabilized his body, and in the next moment, his feet touched the ground. He heard a rapid crunching sound. Without looking, Yang Kai knew that it was the sound of the stone mongoose gnawing on ore. He took out a strange stone used for illumination and held it up high. Before he had time to look around, Yang Inflammation's cry of alarm came from above his head. Yang Kai, help me, I'm stuck. Yang Kai looked up, and his face darkened. Yang Inflammation was indeed stuck. She was stuck by a pair of huge weapons in front of her chest. Her lower body was hanging above Yang Kai's head. Her legs were constantly kicking, but her upper body was still stuck in the tunnel. He reached out and grabbed her ankle, and pulled her down hard. As Yang Inflammation screamed, he pulled her down. It hurts. As soon as Yang landed, she clutched her chest with both hands and rubbed them vigorously as she stared at Yang Kai with tears in her eyes, as if blaming him for not knowing how to show her tenderness towards the fairer sex. There was no time to find trouble with Yang Kai. Using the light emitted by the illuminating stone, Yang Inflammation was able to clearly see the situation around her. She immediately froze in place, her mouth forming a circle as her tender body trembled, immediately forgetting the pain of her breasts being rubbed against. Yang Kai also seemed to have received a huge shock, constantly turning his head to look around, his heart filled with excitement. The two of them were now in an underground cave. This cave should have been recently excavated by the stone mongoose. It was only a few dozen meters in length and width, but under the light of the illuminating stone, the surrounding cave walls reflected a dizzying light. Large and small pieces of space spirit crystal, bright and dark in color, were embedded in the sides of the cave as if they were worthless. Between these space spirit crystals, there were also dark space stones of little value. Inside the underground cave, there was only the sound of the two people breathing heavily and the sound of the stone mongoose gnawing on the oars. After a long time, Yang Inflammation suddenly let out a roar and rushed over to a millstone-sized piece of space spirit crystal that had not yet been excavated at an incredible speed, directly pouncing on it, a satisfied expression on her face as she let out a meow like a cat. It couldn't be said that Yang Inflammation was inexperienced, but Yang Kai's mood was not much worse than hers. He had never expected that in this Dragon Cave mountain, where there were no spirit grasses or spirit medicines, there would actually be such a rich space spirit crystal mine. Judging from the situation of this lode, it could no longer be called a dark space stone lode because almost half of it was filled with space spirit crystals. It was fully qualified to be called a space spirit crystal lode as it was no longer a companion of dark space stone. Yang Kai immediately understood why he hadn't been able to detect the situation here. Firstly, this place was too deep, so Yang Kai hadn't been able to investigate it too carefully. Secondly, there were simply too many space spirit crystals here. This kind of rare mineral was the main material used to make space rings, and it had the function of shielding one's divine sense from detection. If this wasn't the case, one would be able to see what was inside a space ring with a single sweep of their divine sense. The huge number of space spirit crystals here isolated Yang Kai's divine sense from probing, so it was naturally perfectly hidden. Even Yang Kai's divine sense couldn't detect this secret, so the Haiku family naturally couldn't. It was laughable that as the masters of this place, they were sitting on a mountain of treasures but were completely unaware of it. Just because Wu Yi was a woman, they had assigned this beautiful barren mountain to her as her territory. If it weren't for the stone mungoose's innate sensitivity to rare ores, such a treasure would likely have been buried for countless years. Yang Kai hadn't had any contact with the Haiku family, but because of his relationship with Wu Yi, he didn't have a good impression of them. This mountain was given to Yang Kai by Wu Yi to live in, and now that he had discovered so much wealth here, Yang Kai really wanted to thank Wu Yi. However, her strength wasn't high, so she wasn't qualified to occupy such a load. If Wu Yi occupied it, it would only bring disaster to herself and the Haiku family. Yang Kai secretly made up his mind to find an opportunity to compensate her in the future. Yang Kai, we're rich. At some unknown point, Yang Yang had returned and was now standing in front of Yang Kai, her two eyes flashing a green light, giving her a somewhat terrifying appearance. Yang Kai shook his head. I'm the one who's rich. Yang Inflammation pursed her lips before pulling on Yang Kai's arm and shaking it, saying coquettishly, don't be so polite, there are so many space spirit crystals here, just share some with me. What do you need them for? They can only be used to refine space rings. If too many space rings flow out from your hands, even a fool will know you have space spirit crystals. That'll only bring you trouble. I don't need to refine space rings. I need space spirit crystals to study a kind of spirit array. I didn't have the materials before, but now that I do, just share some with me. The spirit array I want to study is very powerful. What kind of spirit array? Yang Kai was shocked, seemingly realizing something. Space arrays, have you heard of them? Yang Inflammation didn't hide anything and said triumphantly, it's a kind of magical spirit array that can teleport between cultivation stars. From the looks of it, you probably haven't heard of them, but when I study them, you'll know how powerful they are. You understand space arrays? Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he stared at her in disbelief. How do you know about them? Didn't they say they were long lost? Last time on Water Moonstar, Yang Kai had used the Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce's space arrays with the monster race master Xue Tong. Xue Tong had said that the current space arrays were all left behind from ancient times. They only knew how to use them, but they didn't understand the principles behind them. Even Gui Zhu, an amazing character, had spent nearly 1,000 years studying space arrays on the floating continent, but in the end, he had made a complete mess of them, causing the deaths of many people. So when Yang Inflammation said she understood space arrays, Yang Kai was surprised. There was a question he had never asked Yang Inflammation, and that was why she was already an origin-grade artifact refiner at such a young age, while he himself was just a Saint King-grade high-rank alchemist. Yang Inflammation was even younger than him, so even if her aptitude was outstanding, it was impossible for her to reach this level with her own efforts. Now that she said she understood space arrays, Yang Kai was even more shocked. Yang Inflammation mumbled a few words, seemingly not wanting to answer. Forget it, there's no need to say anything. Yang Kai didn't force her. Who didn't have secrets in their heart? Secrets couldn't be revealed to others, and Yang Kai had never liked to inquire about others' secrets. Then, are you going to give it to me or not? Yang Inflammation said bitterly, fearing Yang Kai would refuse, quickly adding, I'll tell you, if I study this space array, not only will we be able to teleport from Shadowed Star, we may even be able to teleport to other cultivation stars. What? Yang Kai was really shocked this time. You don't want to be trapped on Shadowed Star for the rest of your life, do you? Yang Inflammation observed Yang Kai's expression and quickly struck while the iron was hot. There are many wonderful things out there that we haven't seen yet. I heard that there are Origin King Realm Masters in Shadowed Star's territory and there are many Origin King grade materials there. With those materials, I can refine Origin King grade artifacts. When the time comes, I can help you refine an artifact of that grade. Even if you stand there and act as a target for others, you won't be injured. This little girl actually knows how to tempt me with benefit. However, it was undeniable that young Kai was really tempted. He wasn't tempted because of Yang Inflammation's unsecured promise, but because of his family and friends on Tongxian realm. If Yang Inflammation could really develop a space array that could teleport between cultivation stars, after he gained a foothold in Shadowed Star's territory, he could bring his family and friends to Shadowed Star's territory and let them enjoy the rich cultivation resources here. Chapter 11:19. Although he was tempted, Yang Kai didn't show it and simply asked, "If your space array really succeeds, how far can it teleport you?" Yang Inflammation sneered, "Space arrays are designed to break through the constraints of distance. As long as you can accurately locate 2 points, distance isn't a problem. There's no distance limit." Yang Kai's eyes lit up. Yang Inflammation pondered for a moment before seriously saying, "In theory, yes, but in practice, we need to study it carefully. Are you going to give it to me or not?" "Of course." Yang Kai laughed and waved his hand generously. In any case, there were so many space spirit crystals here that he couldn't use them all up. When his friends and family came over, he could even ask Yang Inflammation to refine a space ring for each of them. "Thank you so much. You really are a good person." Yang Inflammation was overjoyed and couldn't wait to rush over and kiss Yang Kai, immediately running off to the side to collect space spirit crystals. Although the speed at which she collected space spirit crystals was far slower than the stone mungoose's, only the things she put into her ring could truly be considered hers. Yang Inflammation understood this principle better than anyone else. Yang Kai wasn't as depressed as her. After experiencing the initial surprise and excitement, he slowly calmed down and watched the stone mongoose gnaw on the space spirit crystal mine, watching as layer after layer of impurities seeped out of its body and peeled off, never getting tired of it. After so many years of cultivation and waiting, consuming so many precious ores, he had finally received a return on his investment. What's more, the stone mungoose's return was astonishing. The first lode it found was actually a space spirit crystal mine. According to Yang Inflammation, it was naturally sensitive to rare ores, so as long as he had it, Yang Kai would be able to easily obtain rare ores that others couldn't find in the future. Unfortunately, he only had one blood essence stone. If he had another, the stone mongoose should be able to completely revive. Yang Inflammation was sweating profusely while the stone mongoose was working in full swing. On the other hand, Yang Kai was very idle. Half a day later, Yang Inflammation ran over to Yang Kai, gasping for breath, and took out a piece of Saint Crystal to restore herself. Looking at her appearance, it seemed she wanted to mine more. "What a pity," Yang Yangyun suddenly said. "What's a pity?" Yang Kai was stunned. Others only know that space spirit crystals are used to refine space rings and arrange space arrays, but in fact, they have another use. "Oh, what do you know that others don't?" Yang Kai laughed. Although the time he spent with Yang Inflammation was not long, but this girl always made people feel amazed. This had nothing to do with her appearance, nor her figure. It was entirely her true ability, so Yang Kai did not look down on her. "It can also be used for cultivation." Yang Inflammation shook her head. "You don't know, right?" "Many people don't know. It can be said that very few people know about it. Space spirit crystals can be used for cultivation." Yang Kai was stunned. "Like Saint crystals, can it be used to absorb energy and enhance one's strength?" But we can't. It's only suitable for a special kind of person. Only a cultivator who understands the Tao of space can use it to enhance their own understanding of the Tao of space." Yang Yang continued, completely not noticing that Yang Kai's expression had become strange. "The Tao of space is very obscure and mysterious. Not only is it difficult to grasp the basics of it, but it is even more difficult to master it. The space arrays left behind today were all created by those who cultivated the Tao of space in ancient times. The refinement of space rings was also developed by them. We're just following their lead. I can boldly say that in the entire territory of the star, there are no more than 20 cultivators who understand how to use the Tao of space, and among these 20, only a few can use it against their enemies." "Ah, what are you doing?" Young Inflammation turned her head and found that young Kai was actually holding a piece of space spirit crystal that had been tempered by the stone mongoose and couldn't help laughing. You don't want to absorb the power of this space spirit crystal, do you? There's no need to try. If you don't understand the Tao of space, you won't be able to absorb it, but if you do understand the Tao of space, do you know why those people don't have a deep understanding of the Tao of space? First, they don't know how to use space spirit crystals to cultivate, and second, because there are too few space spirit crystals, they can't use them to cultivate. This kind of cultivation is simply burning money, something most people can't afford. Saying so, Young Inflammation closed her mouth and her eyes widened as she stared incredulously at the space spirit crystal in Yang Kai's hand. She seemed to have discovered that an obscure energy was overflowing from this space spirit crystal and then being absorbed into Yang Kai's body. Thinking it was just an illusion, she couldn't help paying closer attention to it. There was indeed energy flowing out of the space spirit crystal, like a trickling stream, into Yang Kai's body. This wasn't an illusion. Young Inflammation was shocked. Is it really possible? Yang Kai was pleasantly surprised. In his research of the Tao of space, Yang Kai had always relied on the void's turbulence, but studying there was not only dangerous, but also very little benefit. Since leaving the floating continent, Yang Kai had stopped doing so because he found that his mastery of the Tao of space had reached a bottleneck, so there was no point in doing so. Today, after listening to Young Inflammation's words, Yang Kai couldn't help giving it a try, and the results were surprisingly good. Space spirit crystals could really be used for cultivation to enhance one's mastery of the Tao of space. You understand the Tao of space? Young Inflammation couldn't help screaming. I'm one of the 20 people you mentioned. Yang Kai chuckled meaningfully. Heavens, what kind of monster are you? Young Inflammation's beautiful face paled. She had never expected to meet such a person. Yang Kai's mastery of the Tao of space was even more incredible than her being an origin-grade artifact refiner. Same here, we both have secrets. Yang Kai nodded lightly. Good, I'm going to cultivate for a while. You can mine space spirit crystals yourself, however much you mine is yours. When the time comes, just ask the stone mongoose to refine it for you. Saying so, Yang Kai no longer paid any attention to Young Inflammation and began cultivating with the space spirit crystal. Young Inflammation was lost in thought for a while before shaking her head. The more she interacted with this man, the more she couldn't understand him. However, seeing Yang Kai not putting up any defenses against her made Young Inflammation feel very gratified, so she didn't bother him anymore and instead walked over to the stone mongoose and began mining with it. The energy in space spirit crystals was somewhat similar to that in saint crystals, but as Young Inflammation said, not everyone could absorb it. Even Yang Kai couldn't absorb any energy from space spirit crystals without using his space force, but once he did, Yang Kai could feel an incomparably wondrous feeling overflowing from space spirit crystals and flowing into his body. This kind of energy was different from Saint Chi and had no effect on the strength of one's physical body, but as his strength increased, Yang Kai clearly felt that his understanding of the Tao of space was becoming clearer and more proficient. In the past, when Yang Kai was immersed in the void, it was like rowing a boat against the current. It was very difficult, with all kinds of troubles lingering in his mind and blocking his path. Often, it would take a lot of effort and time just to comprehend some clues. But now it was different. Yang Kai had never experienced such a feeling before. The mysteries of the Tao of space seemed to have opened up wide, allowing him to freely explore them and pry into all kinds of secrets. Yang Kai never knew that cultivating the mysteries of the Tao of space could be so simple and easy. Extremely excited, Yang Kai began cultivating, forgetting everything around him. But soon, Yang Kai discovered a problem. Indeed, as Young Inflammation had said before, this kind of cultivation was simply a super prodigal act. The consumption of space spirit crystals was much faster than saint crystals. A single piece of high-rank saint crystal could be used by Yang Kai to cultivate for 2 hours before completely absorbing the energy inside it. However, a fist-sized piece of space spirit crystal that had been refined by the stone mongoose only lasted less than an hour before disappearing. In a single day, Yang Kai would consume more than a dozen pieces of refined space spirit crystal essence, which amounted to at least several 100,000 high-rank saint crystal. Who could afford such a price? Even a behemoth like Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce would not be able to afford it. If Yang Kai continued to cultivate like this, he would sooner or later go bankrupt. Fortunately, the stone mongoose had discovered such a large space spirit crystal mine, and fortunately, Wu Yi had given him this mountain to live on. Yang Kai felt extremely grateful. Time flew by, and 10 days later, Yang Kai had consumed nearly 200 pieces of space spirit crystal, more than half of what the stone mongoose had brought back last time. Fortunately, over the past 10 days or so, the stone puppet had been constantly mining, and now the underground cave had become much larger, several times larger than before. Feeling Yang Kai's summons, the stone mongoose walked over, opened its mouth, and placed a few hundred more refined space spirit crystals in front of Yang Kai. Yang Inflammation couldn't bear to look at Yang Kai. She felt that Yang Kai was an evil slave master while the stone mongoose was a poor little slave who had worked so hard to collect space spirit crystals only to be exploited by Yang Kai. Putting the several hundred space spirit crystals into the demon mystic tome, Yang Kai began cultivating again. He felt that his understanding of the Tao of space had taken a great leap forward, and although he had not tested it yet, he estimated that now that he could tear space, the distance he could move was definitely more than 1,000 kilometers. On this day, the space spirit crystal in Yang Kai's hand disappeared again. Slowly opening his eyes, he saw Yang Inflammation looking at him with a pained expression. She was sitting quietly in front of him, her body covered in dirt, her hands resting on her cheeks as she stared at him. "Why aren't you collecting?" Yang Kai asked. Yang Inflammation curled her lips and said, "I found that I didn't need to work so hard to collect space spirit crystals, I just let Xiao Xiao collect them. If I need to use them, I can just look for you." "Xiao Xiao?" Yang Kai frowned. Yang Inflammation pointed to the stone mongoose, who was diligently gnawing on space spirit crystals. Yang Kai realized that she had given this little guy a name without his permission. Smiling, he said, "You finally noticed. You're enjoying the fruits of its labor with a clear conscience, so why should I work as a laborer?" Yang Inflammation stood up and patted the dust off her butt. "Let's go up. I'll leave the space spirit crystals to it, I still have some artifact refining to do." Yang Kai thought about it for a moment before nodding. "All right. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,